Hey cinematic composers, so I'm gonna create a coupon for our I'm a Composer course, which usually sells for $1,249. The name of the coupon is I'm a Composer $99. It's gonna be a discount of $1,150. So what this means is that if you now go to cinematiccomposing.com/I'm a composer and you join the course, and in here you add the I'm a Composer 99 coupon, you'll get access to this amazing course, which is more than 11 hours of content, pages and pages of content for just $99 instead of $1,249. This course will teach you how to compose orchestral music in different styles, as you can see: love, sadness, suspense, etc., action with intensity, adventure, so many others. It starts with 4 easy to follow along videos where I walk you step by step on how to compose in this particular style. You're gonna see me compose live, so you can replicate what I'm doing. And then for those who are nerds like me, there is infinite score analysis of some of the major movies and blockbusters of all time. We have transcribed, reduced, and analyzed some of the most iconic film scores. And then we structured the conclusions so you know how to compose in that particular style. All of this for just $99. Good luck. Let's get started with the orchestral template course for film composing. Ultimately, this is what you're going to be creating. This is the back end. This looks a little bit intimidating at the beginning, but don't worry. We'll walk you step by step. You do not need to buy any library. If you already have some orchestral sample libraries, fantastic. But we're going to be recreating this template using free libraries. The outcome of this is that you, one, put your hands on the keyboard and you can start composing right away. That's the outcome number one. Second, the template will mix and master the music for you, meaning because you have a template and you have a well set up template back end, the template is going to be mixing the music for you. You're going to have your reverbs set up and everything. Again, you don't have to use paid reverbs. We're going to see options on how to use free reverbs, free resources, and also the template is going to be mastering the music for you automatically. So what this means is that the template is going to take care of all the mixing mastering, so it's going to improve the sound of your music. So first, put your hands on the keyboard and you've got all the sounds loaded. So this is going to give you more speed. Also, we're going to set up the template with a specific type of patches and tracks loaded and configured in a specific way, so you don't have to orchestrate all the time, and it speeds up your composing workflow. Number one. Second, it's going to improve your sound, and number three, it's going to give you structure to your composing, and it's going to make it easier to work in a film, especially in a film scoring environment where you have to compose lots of cues, and also you have to be delivering lots of cues, so you can export tracks, but not just the tracks, also the stems real quick to send to DAB mix. So this is the goal of this program. This will have 3 parts. Number one, we're going to be talking a little bit about theory. Why do you need a template? Front end versus back end. Messy template. Do you have to have a very organized template, or can you start composing without having any track loaded? Then we'll talk about my template. It'll show everything, the front end, the back end. This is not to intimidate you, it's so you know where we are going ultimately. Now, this is an evolution of 13 years of me composing. You're going to start with something way smaller, and then you're going to create your own template. Up until this point, we are at the kind of like the beginning stage, or beginner stage, beginner world, all right? And then we're going to add the speed layer, the structure layer, and the sound layer to make our template work faster, better, and sound better. So that's the second part. So first part of the program, second part, and finally, we're going to compose some music. We're going to compose a positive emotions or love kind of cue or song. And then we're going to compose an action, mid intensity or tension type of cue. And then finally, we're going to compose a kind of freestyle cue that you can compose. And with that, you will do two things. First, we'll put the template to test, which is the most important thing. And also you get to compose some music and you kind of like free up or unlock those blockages, like taking the ideas that you've got in your head and putting in your sequencer. And with the template now ready, you'll see how much faster and easier it is. All right, with that, let's get started. Why do you need a template? Why do we need a template? Do you even need a template? Let's just question this for a second. When I'm talking about an orchestral template, I'm talking about something like this. So all these tracks loaded, you can see them here on the left side. So for some composers, one, having a structure like this when it comes to composing, it can cause two things. Number one, first, it can be daunting. It can be intimidating. How am I going to load so many instruments in my computer? That's number one. Number two, also for some composers, having a set of tracks already pre-loaded feels like being in a jail, like being in a box, right? There are some composers who prefer the complete opposite, a complete, blank project, and you start loading tracks as you need them, right? Gives you more freedom. So some composers may prefer to not have a template. This may be you, and that's perfectly fine. But in a second, we'll discover that the template is not just the tracks that you've got loaded. A template has a front end and a back end, meaning even if you don't see any track loaded, behind the scenes, there are a series of groups, stems, and we've got a section here with the groups where when you load a track here, you're going to route it to a specific place that's going to elevate the sound and organize the mix for you. We'll talk about this in a second. But going back here, there are composers who prefer to not have track loaded. I'm going to start composing here, and as I need new tracks, I'm going to load them. Add the instrument track, I'll select contact or labs or whatever, and I'll take it from here. There are other composers who don't have a fully fleshed out template, but they will have something like this, what I call the sketching patches or fast action patches. These are very useful when you start composing, and they do exactly what they say they do. They are used for sketching. They are used for fast action. So, for example, we're gonna have short orchestral. See, if we open this patch, this is a combination. It's a series of patches that I stacked. So if I want the full orchestral short notes staccato type of sound, I have already built it here, so I don't have to spend 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it takes to orchestrate something like this, right? All of this has already been balanced, placed, etc., like balanced in terms of volume, left, right, panning, etc. Same thing with long. This one here. I'm bringing wire. And we've got a series of these tracks, as you can see, brass long notes, brass short notes, same thing with woodwinds, strings, we've got the same thing with percussion up here, we've got choir, etc. We'll get more, we'll talk about this later on in the training, but these, what I call the sketching patches or fast action patches, come in handy, and some composers like to have a small little template like this, which is very useful section of a template. And then for more specific and detailed articulations or instruments, then they load it as they go. And there are other composers like me that I like to have I've got these tracks up here, and then I've got the rest of them loaded. And this doesn't even take 20% of the computer capacity. It is very important because, so if I need more tracks, for example, up here, you see this folder? This is for a movie that I'm working at the moment, Summer House. It's a Lifetime movie. And I've got specific tracks for this particular project, right, that I'm loading. So these are and it's important that your template is not maxing out your computer capacity, because you will always need to add specific instruments for a specific project to create that sonic world for that specific project. So these are three options that you've got, okay? You can start from scratch having no template, or at least no tracks loaded. You'll still have a template. We'll discuss this right now. So no tracks loaded. So when you start a project, you start loading the tracks from scratch. You can have the sketching patches like this. or you can have the fully fleshed out orchestral template with everything loaded. If you have either just the sketching patches or the fully fleshed out orchestral template, this is the first answer to the question, why do you need a template? Generally, the most obvious answer to this is going to be speed. I've got everything loaded so I can put my hands on the keyboard and start composing, right? This is the typical answer, why do I have a template? But this is just beginning stages. Like if you've got this, great, fantastic, it's going to help, right? Compose, but you don't have to load the instruments. But that is not even 20% of why of the reason why we have a template. The second reason why we would have a template, and this is something that many people miss, is sound. It's very obvious, but sometimes we forget about this. Sound. Template is not just a collection of instruments loaded in your sequencer, your DAW. The template, the most important part of a template, in my opinion, is sound. The template should elevate your music, your sound. It should make it bigger, more cinematic. It should help avoid problems like frequency stacking. It should obviously have everything balanced. It should also position left, right. It should also have all the reverbs loaded to properly create depth. It should have the different percussive basses, stems, and grooves with its, the right amount of compression to control dynamics in the more aggressive elements of the template, like percussive elements. It should add a little bit of tape saturation when needed to lift up the sound. So all these things that you would do later on during the mixing process, and you definitely can if you've got the budget and the time. But many timelines are very compressed in professional projects. And so the template should do all of that for you, and totally can. And I'll explain later on in the training how to do this. It's going to be very easy, one step at a time. So not just the template should mix, so elevate the sound by mixing the music for you, it should also master the music for you. Now, at this point, this is obviously not going to be as perfect as you composing the music, step number one, then exporting the audio and sending it a mixing engineer, and they are going to do the work in mixing your music, right? And then exporting that into a stereo or a surround file and sending it to a mastering engineer. It's never going to be the same thing, obviously, but it's going to be 80%. So we're going to apply, when building a template, we're going to always be discussing the 80-20 rule. What are the 20% of the tracks that we can have loaded so we can compose 80% of the music that we need? What is the 20% most important mixing things that we would have to do in our template so we get 80% of our mix automated and done, right? Again, it's not going to be perfect, the mix, but it's going to be 80% there. And that's what we want, because for most of the projects, 80% is all we need. So reason number one, speed. Reason number two, sound, mix and master. And reason number three is going to be structure. It's going to be very important that you have your template set up in a way and everything routed. So when you are done composing, let's say you've composed this piece, is finished and done. In fact, this is a piece that I just composed for a movie that I'm working on, the movie that I mentioned. It's up here. And if I open the project, see? So I'm done with this cue. And when I'm done, I can select this region. I hit A. Well, let me first, because I've got everything set up the right way, and we've got all the stems or here. See, orchestra, percussion, synths, pulses, bass, and other. This is how I like to organize it. I can hit A, and I can select export, master, and all these synths, right? I also have it set up. We'll talk about this in a second. So all the effects get printed in the stems. So the sum of the stems sounds exactly the same as the master bus. And why do we do this? Because when we're working on film scoring, a project like this, we need to send the music like this. You see, here's the master, and then we've got orchestra, other percussion, pulses, synths, bass, and sub. And then also the video export. And where I can do this with, click of a button, it'll export everything through these groups, through these stems. And this is what gets sent to dub mix. Dub mix is the process of mixing your music in a movie, mixing your music with dialogue and sound effects. So that's it. This is the reason why we need a template. Ultimately, what we want is to have a tool that allows us to take our ideas from our head to our sequencer as easy, fast, efficiently as possible. And so we want to optimize our composing workflow. So this is going to help. Having all the tracks loaded is going to help with the speed. Still, some composers prefer not to have tracks loaded or just to have a few sketching or fast action patches. Great, this may be you. Still, behind the scenes, what happens is there's a setup like this that allows them to, or that the template helps enhancing the sound. So basically what I'm saying is the template's going to do mix and mastering. It's going to make your music sound better, and it's going to avoid orchestral programming sound problems like frequency stacking. So that's the reason number 2. And reason number 3 is structure, keeping 1, everything organized, and 2, speed when exporting for the next step in the project, which is going to be dub mix. So that's what we've covered in this video. In this one and the next one, we're going to be talking about front end versus back end, and we're going to be taking a look at my template so you understand the entire structure. And after that, I'll walk you step by step so you can create your own template quickly. This is not going to take a lot of time, you see. All right, see you in the next video. We're going to be taking a look at my template now. This is one of the most important videos of the training. It's also going to be one of the longest ones. Now, before we dive into explaining my template, all the routing, etc., let's understand the goal of this template, the goal of this training. What I'm about to explain is so you understand where we are going, so you understand the philosophy, the idea behind how all the pieces connect together. As I explain how everything is configured, you'll see that there's a lot going on. Do not get overwhelmed. I'm showing my template, so you see a mature template that has been optimized and has evolved over time. But don't get intimidated, because first, you'll start much, much smaller. That's number 1. And number 2, your template should be your own. You're going to start small, and the template will grow over time as you grow as a composer and you start defining your own unique sound. I'll tell you a quick story so you understand the mistakes that I did so you don't make the same mistakes. So the first time that I heard about the template was back in 2007, 2008, something like this. I was studying at Conservatory Music Composition. That's in Spain. It is 15 years. So I was finishing up, and it was, I think, my last or one to the last year, something like this. And I was composing back then with Finale using a score editor. At some point in that time, I transitioned to using Sequencer, and they started using sample libraries. I remember I bought, well, back then my parents bought, I was in my early 20s, the Vienna Symphonic Library Orchestral Cube, right? So I installed everything, and my music started sounding better, because back then composing with Finale with MIDI sounds as opposed as using a sequencer and using sample libraries was a big difference. So I started, and I had no template, right? Every time that I wanted to compose something, I would start like, okay, what do I need? Violins. Okay, I'm gonna load violins to staccatos, and I would load it there, and then whatever I needed, oboes, and I would start loading. And the process was very messy. It would look something like this. For example, I would load. I think to start, I'm gonna need kind of like a boat organ pipes, and then some tremolo guitar, and then maybe some choir, and then a piano, right? And then maybe the string short notes or the violin short notes, right? Cellos, long notes, or tremolo cellos. This is a messy approach to music composition, which is perfectly fine. It's not like you've got everything set up in a template and everything organized. No, you start loading as you need things, and that's perfectly fine. There are some composers who compose like that. I've composed like that, and in some projects where I don't need kind of like the orchestral template loaded, where it's more hybrid, I'll be loading stuff as I need it, right? So that's perfectly fine. what I would do is, as I'm progressing through the queue, and I've got maybe 30 tracks that are very not organized, right? Then I would just move them. I would reorganize them, right? So I would put the whatever, right? This thing staccatos here, whatever. I would move them around. And I did that so as I'm composing, I can find them, because when you've got lots of them, if they are not organized, it's hard to find them. That's very important. At some point, we'll get there, because when you have a large template like this, or if you start from a scratch and you start loading lots of tracks, when you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, at some points, like, it's not even easy to find them, right? And so I would organize them so it's visually easier to find. And then at some point, I saw, back in, again, 2010, 2008 or 9, something like this, I saw Mike Pattis, the Cinesamples founder, one of these old videos, him composing a live cue. I think it was like a fantasy or an action cue, something like this, in 10 or 20 minutes. And I saw he had all these tracks loaded. And he was talking about the orchestral template. And to me, I was like, wow, this is awesome. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I created my template, right? And what did I do? I kind of like copied someone else. And so I loaded everything and I started configuring, and I spent so much time in the creation of the template. Not necessarily composing with the template or testing the template, by creating, configuring, setting the template up, right? So I spent lots of time configuring a big template, and I was so proud of that template. In fact, this is hard to find, but if you go on YouTube and look for this title, I went on YouTube and I did my first ever YouTube video, and it's this one here. Me explaining the template, and in theory, it worked. But two problems. Number one, it didn't quite work for me personally. It was someone else's template, right? I copied someone else's template. Number one, this was not a representation of me as a composer and my voice. So that's the first thing. And second thing, it's one thing to set up a template, and it's another thing to actually have a template that actually works. So your template can be set up and all the tracks loaded and it works, right? But as you start composing and you add more and more MIDI regions, and the template's actually playing back, then the CPU workload is gonna go up as it's playing back all the samples, and then your template, if it's not properly optimized, it's going to crash or it's going to overload your CPU. All right? So that's the first thing that we're gonna tackle. But here's the thing with templates, and I think this is very important. The bigger, the more complex your system is, generally the more chances for it to break. And if it breaks, it's also, in a complex system, harder to find the solution. So back then, my template, and I explain this story so you understand why my template is the way it is right now. But back then, my template was, because computers were not as powerful as they are today, and it's a blessing that computers are way more powerful these days, especially like, M1s, M2s, M3s processor these days. It's just amazing. But back then, I had a main computer, right? And then I had a server computer, and I was using BE Pro to load samples in the second computer, the server computer, and to explain this in the simplest way possible, is your main computer doesn't have any sounds loaded. All the sounds are loaded in the server computer, but you control everything from your main computer. Right? Back then, you would be using something like Bdual or BE Pro. BE Pro still exists these days, and Bdual as well. But that makes the routing a little bit more complicated. On top of that, I had Ableton Live rewired to Logic. And so one day I was working with a director. This is, if you have a chance, it's not always possible, but I like to, especially at the beginning of the process in a project, in a movie, to sit down with the director and compose live in front of them, because that way, if you get a cue approved by the director, then it's approved. You don't need to write rewrites. But basically, the most important thing is that it's easier and faster to find the sounds, the themes that work, and it's you can have a more efficient conversation instead of you sitting in your studio and then trying to figure out what works, spending hours, then sending it to the director. They review the music. It's like, no, it makes sense. It's just a slower process. So when possible, not always, this is a luxury, but when possible, at the beginning of a project, if we can get together and compose live, it is great. Now, for this to happen, you have to have a system, a template that allows you to compose fast, because the director is not gonna be there waiting for you to load the tracks, right? And so I was there composing, with the director, you can see the logic template here. It's the two computers that I was talking about, the main computer, the server computer. And all of a sudden I had a small little bug. The template crashed. I had to reboot. Wasn't working. They couldn't find the solution right there in the spot. You are more nervous. You're in front of the director. We had to cancel the session and meet the next day. Very embarrassing. So after this happening to me several times, I kind of like learned the lesson, right? And I understood, okay, template must be simple or as simple as possible, easy to use, and it has to be efficient. Because that's the second problem. The second problem is like, it doesn't matter if you have a big template and everything loaded and it's loaded there, but if you start composing and everything crashes because CPU overload, then it means that you have a great template that is not usable, and that's not what we want, okay? So my template, three things. Number one, runs in one computer, not multiple computers, and it can run on a laptop. In fact, this same template that I showed you here, it also runs on a relatively old M1 MacBook Pro with 64 gigs of RAM. This is a very powerful laptop for sure. But these days with the M3s, this can go up to 128. But with a laptop, these templates runs no problem. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing, everything is loaded natively inside the DAW. So not just we are using just one computer, not two, but also what in the past used to make this a little bit more efficient was to just having one computer, but having the sounds loaded in a host software called BN Ensemble Pro. It is not the case here. To simplify things even further, everything is loaded natively inside Cubase in this case, or inside Logic, right? I'm using Cubase. So no BN Ensemble Pro, and this simplifies routing big time. In order to achieve this and have so many tracks loaded already in a template like this, we have to use the disable enable method. What this means is that you see there are some tracks that are grayed out. This is because these tracks are not loaded. They are ready, but they are not loaded on RAM. So for example, this track here, Violins 1 short notes, it's not active. If I hit play, nothing happens. Now if I click here and I select enable selected track, it'll load this track, as you can see, and now we've got sound. So what this allows me to do is to just have active the tracks that I'm using, and if I need more, it just takes a second to activate the track, and then I kind of start composing. So it does not affect my workflow, but it does improve. If I had all the tracks loaded, most likely I wouldn't be able to load them all in one laptop. And also, every time that I open and close a project, it would take a lot of time because it has to load all that sample data into RAM, and this just takes time. In the past, when I was using multiple computers and I had the server computer with all the samples loaded in BN Ensemble Pro, that computer would always be running, right? And you can, at your main computer, you could have you had the project but without the samples loaded, and you could close and open projects all the time because basically you were closing a project, opening a new one, that new one connects to BE Pro, and it doesn't have to load samples because everything, it needs to connect, and the connection is fast. But with the disable enable approach, to me it works. I can have everything in one computer. It can be a small computer, and also the load time of the template is not huge because you are not loading that many tracks. And if you need more tracks, it just takes a second, as you can see. So my template, one computer, everything loaded natively inside of the DAW. And all the tracks are track instruments, not rack instruments. So this again simplifies routing as well. What this means basically is that these tracks are very simple tracks. It's a track with a plugin, a sampler loaded, like this one. End of a story. It's not like a track where you can load 16 instruments with 16 MIDI channels, 16 stereo outputs. It's much simpler. Just one track with the sampler. End of a story. And this allows me to be able to move tracks around, no problem. I can also quickly duplicate. See, I just duplicated this track. You can duplicate tracks quickly, and it preserves the routing and everything, and then I can make a quick change here if I want to. All right, so with that first part out of the way, we will jump in and talk about how my template is configured. Before we go there, real quick, just reiterating the concept of there is a front end and the back end. The front end is what we see where we are working all the time. The most obvious part of the template. Here's where the music happens. Here's where the music gets composed. Here's where you're gonna be working on the actual MIDI notes where you're gonna be spending most of the time composing. But then there's the back end as well. And if the music happens here, I would say the magic happens here. Here's where all the mixing happens and all the organization, and it is gonna be crucial for your music to sound professional, or how we like to call it, soundtrack ready. So now I'm gonna be explaining my template. I'm not going to be spending most of the time here in the front end explaining, well, these are the tracks that I loaded here exactly, because we're gonna be doing this later on in the process as I walk you step by step for you to build your own template. What I'm going to spend most time on is in for you to understand the structure and the routing of the template. That is the important part. For you to clearly understand this, what I'll do is, number one, I'll explain each one of the parts of the template. So here are all the tracks, here are all the groups, here are all the stems, here are the effects groups, and here's how they connect. So that's going to be the first part. And second, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one instrument, and then we're going to follow the signal path from beginning to end so you can see it in action. Now, one last thing before we dive in, my template is set up the way it's set up for max efficiency. I was called beginning of this year to do a movie. It was 84 minutes of music and it was 3 weeks. There are two ways of doing this. The most common sense one is you're not going to be doing all the music. You have a friend or a co-composer that's going to be doing music for you, maybe additional music that does 20% of the music, something like this. In this case, I had the time and I wanted to test myself, so I did the entire movie myself. And so I adapted my template to be able to compose fast as possible. My template was already efficient. It was like I obviously would not have time to mix my cues. It wouldn't be the normal process when you've got time and budget where you compose the music and then export and then someone else mixes the music for you, or you mix the music for you. No, it's like you are composing. What comes out from the template is the final sound. That track gets sent to director. If it gets approved, then we export the stems and mastering and gets sent to DAP. So there's no luxury for mixing or mastering. In this case, was a low budget movie. There's no budget to record with an orchestra, so everything was happening inside the box. So music needs to sound mixed and mastered when finished composing. And in order for me to achieve that, I need to add mixing plugins to all my groups and mastering plugins to stems. These here are the groups with the mixing plugins. These are the reverbs, and here are the stems with the mastering plugins. We'll talk about this more in the next video. And here's the limitation. You won't be able to use any plugin. There are some plugins that would add latency to your system. What that means is that when you hit the keyboard, it'll take 5, 20, 50 milliseconds for the sound to be processed through the plugin, and then you will hear it in your speakers or your headphones. And so these plugins cannot add latency to the system and must be light on CPU. So not every plugin will work. For example, see all these UAD plugins that I have inactive here? These are like 50 milliseconds. If I take this plugin, for example, which is the fab filter, the multiband compressor, and I activate the look ahead on, boom, see, it added 20 milliseconds of latency. If I get rid of it, boom, it disappears. So that's what we're trying to avoid. If plugins add something like 1 to 2, 3 milliseconds, that's fine with me. But above 5, it's a no-no. So what all this means is that my template has been very carefully designed to meet all these conditions. It has all the tracks that I need to compose. It has no latency. It also mixes and masters my music, and it is structured in a way, also adds all the reverbs when necessary, and it is structured in a way so if my music needs to be sent directly to DAP and mix, the sound is perfect here, hit a key, and I can export master and the stems. And if I need to export my tracks to for them to be mixed, then they can be printed without the without the reverb added on them. All right. Now let's dive into my template in the next video. See you there. All right, so let's go. This is going to be a deep dive into my template. So this should be a lot of fun. And the goal of this video, and the reason why I'm doing this video, the reason why I'm explaining my template, is so you understand where we are going. The goal is not for you to feel overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, this is so the configuration is so complicated. Don't get overwhelmed. Your template does not need to be that complex, especially initially, and I'm gonna walk you step by step to create your own after this video. So this video will have two parts. First, I'll explain each one of the sections of my template, and then I'll explain the entire routing. And so when I'm explaining the different sections of the template, I'll start with the front end, which is this section here, and I'm gonna go strategic here. It's not going to be as much about each one of the tracks and what instrument exactly. It's going to be, okay, why did I organize this way, right? With the sketching patches first, etc. So at a 50,000 foot view, we're not gonna go granular. Then we're gonna move to the back end, and we're gonna be talking about groups, stems, and reverbs. So what are groups, stems? What's the difference between them? Just let's explain this so we understand. We're gonna be showing this graphic multiple times, but we have tracks first of all, and the tracks are each one of the tracks that we've got loaded, right? From a piano track to the strings, staccato strings, legato strings. We've got violins, two staccatos, right? So that's one thing. Generally, we're going to have something like 20, 30, 100, 200, 400 tracks, right? There's some bigger templates with thousands of tracks. So many tracks. Then these tracks are going to be routed to groups. Groups, see, there are less groups generally. So we may have something like 400 tracks, right? And then you may have 20 groups. And in the groups, you're going to be organizing groups of tracks by type. And you can organize this however you want. It doesn't really matter. The approach is, in the groups is where the mix happens. That's what you need to understand. So when choosing how many groups to have, see, these are my groups here. String short high, string short low, strings long high, strings long low. So when choosing how to group the different tracks here in the groups section, I would say try to keep it as simple as possible. Try to have as little groups as possible, as long as you've got enough mixing flexibility. What does this mean? Well, if you route all the orchestral instruments into an orchestra group, this is nice. It's gonna give you a lot of flexibility, a lot of simplicity, but you will not have enough flexibility when it comes to mixing, because maybe you want to add a different reverb for the strings than a reverb for brass instruments, for example, or you may want to open a little bit or widen a little bit the high strings like violins, violas, but not the cellos and double basses, right? Or maybe you want to compress certain instruments and you don't want to compress others. So, having such a large group like orchestra, that would be too big of a group. And so instead, what I recommend is to separate at least the orchestral groups, for example, like strings, brass, woodwinds, percussion, And generally, I also like to separate the short notes and long notes. See, strings, short notes, string, long notes. And depending on the section, I also like to separate the high-pitched and the low-pitched instruments in the family. So strings, short, high for all the violins 1 and 2 and viola staccatos and pizzicatos and things like this. Strings, short, low, same articulations, but now for cellos and double basses. And then the same thing, strings long, high, now for the violins 1, 2, and violas, but legatos, long notes, harmonics, things like this, or sustains. And the same thing for the low strings. Why is this type of separation useful? Because of reverbs. Generally, we're going to have more reverb for long notes and less reverb for short notes. And that's a very simplified way of looking at it. But generally, if you have like a fast ostinato, like the cellos are doing something like this. So for example, if you've got something like this, you don't want as much reverb as if you had in a small or a slow strings melody line like this one. But at the same time, we generally want to have less reverb in the mid-low end of the orchestra. So if you've got still long notes type of line, but now we've got cellos in the low register. Generally, we're going to have a slightly shorter reverb. So that is why having this type of separation helps. So we've got the tracks, which are hundreds. Then we're going to have the groups, which are going to be 10, 20, 30, something like this. It's a smaller group that gets routed to an even smaller group called the stems. And here, these are the big groups like orchestra, percussion, synths. In my template, the groups are here, the stems are here. The groups, what we just talked about, are here. And see, I may have 20 or 30. These guys here. This is a darker blue. From here, from here to here. So this section here, and then we've got the stems here. It's a smaller group. In my case, I've got orchestra, percussion, synths, pulses, bass and subs, and other. This can change from project to project, but generally, so I could have orchestra, percussion, synths, keys for piano, synths, like things like this, and then but generally I have six of them. Sometimes they change, but it's always 6. So these are the stems, and then finally the stems go to the master. I've got a set of tracks that are called effects groups, where I've got all my reverbs, and you can see this here. These ones here, these are my reverbs. So I've got a short reverb, I've got a mid reverb, I've got a long reverb, etc. And these are the different reverbs. We're going to be talking about this later on. But these are some of my reverbs. And as you can see here in the groups, you can see the send section. These are the sends. And let's say, for example, that I want for the piano track, which is this track over here. If I select the piano track, then I can play the piano. Right? Now, this piano track would be in here in the track section. It would be routed to one of the groups, which happens to be the piano group, which is right here. And from the piano group, goes to one of the stems. To one of the stems, you can see, from the track to the group here, and from the group to the stem that's named other. Right. So if I want the piano to have a really long reverb, I would go here to the piano group. I would set a reverb, a send to the super long reverb. I would activate this reverb and I would bring it up to something like 0 or -3 to make it very, very obvious. And as I hit the piano, now this has a super long reverb. So you can see that this is going right here from the piano track to the group, which is right here. And then it's sending this signal to the super long reverb effects group through a send, like this. It's going to one of these effects groups. In this effect group, which is this one, we have inserted a reverb plugin, which is this one with a very long reverb, 7 seconds. And that's what adds the reverb to the sound. Now all these effects groups, the output of these effects groups are routed to the master bus. Now remember that I said earlier that the music needs to sound mixed and mastered when finished composing. When I'm working on a film, I also said that when I'm done composing a cue, I need to be able to export master and the stems to submit for the next stage in the process, which is dub mix. Well, the sum of the stems sonically needs to sound exactly the same as the master. So what that means is that when the mixing engineer is mixing your music with dialogue and sound effects, they will have your master track, which is your music, and they also, below the master track, they will have the different stems, like this. See, this is the master, and then the stems below. They should be able to bypass from master to stems, and they have to sound exactly the same. So if we look at this graphic, the reverbs are not getting printed in each one of the stems. So as we are composing, what we hear, which is the master, the output of the master, that goes to the speakers or headphones, sounds great, has the reverbs printed there. But if we export master and the stems, theoretically, the reverb is going to get printed here, but not here, right? Well, there's a solution to that, which is in Cubase and similar in Logic. But in Cubase specifically, when you export, you just have to select Effects, and then here Master Groups Sense is the CSPM. And what this is going to do basically is, instead of doing one export, it's going to export it 7 times, one for the master and then one for each one of the stems, orchestra, percussion, synths, pulses, bass, and other. And it's going to basically export the master first with the reverbs printed there, and then it's going to, and all this happens behind the scenes. It's going to do a second export where it's going to mute all the stems except for the first one. It's going to do an export through the master, and then it's going to label it, the name of the file, with the name of the stem. And then it's going to do a second export where it's going to mute everyone except for this one, and then the next one, and so on and so forth. It takes a little bit more of time, but it solves the problem, because if we didn't have this, the ability of doing this, then what we would have to do is to insert the reverbs in each one of the groups, and then we would have too many reverb plugins. Reverb plugins take a lot of CPU power, and so with this method, we just need to have one set of reverbs, and we can have them apply to any stem that we want, and we've got all the flexibility that we need. All right, so we have talked about tracks first. Then we've got the groups. We talked about the groups. We talked about the sense. We talked about effects groups. We talked about stems. And then with all of this, finally goes to the master. Now, let's now understand what happens in each one of these sections of the template. So what we are trying to achieve at the tracks level is 2 things. Number 1, balance. Man, I don't know who wrote this, but this should be a B. So balance with a B. That's the first most important thing that we are trying to achieve at the tracks level. And then also what we're trying to achieve is to avoid frequency stacking. So as you can see up here, again, the first thing that we are trying to achieve is balance, meaning we want to make sure that our entire template is balanced in terms of volume, meaning that the strings sound balanced with brass, or the trumpet is balanced with the oboes, the percussion is not too loud, and because we are going to have different libraries from different brands, companies, some libraries sound a little bit louder. So basically we have to balance. Even sometimes, even within a library from a developer, sometimes the viola sound a little bit too hot or too loud, right? We have to bring them down a little bit. So that's the first most important thing. We need to have a balanced template. And what you're gonna see here is, if you look up here at the gain level, see, this one is -11, this one is -10, this one is -8. So we are balancing the template so all the tracks sound at the right level. And the second, and not as important, but very important as well, see up here, this is EQ. See that we are carving out some of the frequencies, like for example here, a little bit more, and here it's another one, right? This is EQ. And we are doing this to avoid frequency stacking. Let's talk real quick about frequency stacking. When an orchestra gets recorded, the way it generally works, if we were to record the entire orchestra at the same time, we would have that orchestra first would be recorded in one room, either it's a concert hall or a scoring stage. One set of mics, generally we're going to have the Deca 3 mics, which is a set of 3 mics above the conductor. We're going to have the wide or the wide mics, and then we're going to have the surround mics, and then we're going to have the spot mics and the close mics. Lots of mics. Those mics add a little bit, they have their own unique response. So they'll modify and add a little bit of character to the sound. So it's a mic doesn't capture the sound in a flat way. It's always going to shape the sound a little bit. And they will also add a little bit of floor noise. So you've got one room, we've got one set of mics. Those mics go through preamps, right? And then they get recorded and from analog to digital. That's kind of like a very simplified way. And that happens if we record the orchestra at the same, like the entire orchestra, then that's it. Now, what we're doing here when composing orchestral music using a sequencer or DAW is, as you can see, we're stacking the same set that I explained you, that one room with one set of mics, a series of preamps, etc. This is what happens for each one of these. Like this sound, this got recorded in that one room with that one set of mics with all that, right? Now, if we have one note, this is one sample. If we have two notes, now we are stacking recordings, and we're stacking that same room again with that room response, those mics with the specific, the way they shape the sound, right, etc., etc. So that's just one patch. On top of that, we're gonna have a second patch and another one and another one, and we are stacking recordings. So that is why generally an orchestral mockup will sound thicker generally than orchestra, because there's stacking problems that we have to mitigate or we have to solve. How do we do that? By carving out some frequencies or some areas that are the most problematic. Now, that frequency stacking generally happens in different frequency ranges, but generally the most problematic one is the mid-low end. The mid-low end is generally this area between 200 cycles to 400, something like this. And this is where the muddiness of the sound usually is. If we bring this up, see, this is where it gets muddy. And we generally are gonna cut a little bit, in this case at around 293. Something like this, something very subtle, something like 1 to 3 dBs max, and that is going to clean up the sound a little bit in a very subtle way, and it's going to be, again, subtle but meaningful when we put it all together. And so every track, it's going to have a little bit of EQ that's going to take care of carving out some of the problematic frequencies. In each one of the tracks, the difference is going to be very subtle, but when you put them all together, it's a very meaningful difference, and we avoid that frequency stacking. We do this track by track. It is not the same, doing the same in the master track. We do this track by track, and each one of the tracks is going to be slightly different. Don't worry about this process. Again, I'll walk you step by step when we create the template from scratch. So at the tracks level, we're going to achieve two things, as we've said. First, balance with B. Second, avoiding frequency stacking, so we're going to have EQ. And then finally, additionally, we're going to add tape saturation to all the tracks, and that's going to lift the sound a little bit. This is not necessary, this is optional, but as you can see, each one of the tracks has a little bit, see this orange plugin here? This is, if I open this one, this is a little bit of tape saturation, or in this case, parallels tape saturation. A tape recorder looks something like this. And back in the days, before digital recording, music or sound used to get recorded in tape machines like this one. And you could record something like 6 tracks, 12 tracks, or 24 tracks, like the Studer A800, things like this, right? This type of recording, tape saturation, adds a little bit of noise, and so it's not as clean as digital. So adds a little bit of noise. It also saturates a little bit the sound, but it just happens to be that tape saturation is particularly pleasant to our ears, and so it makes the sound a little bit nicer. That's one thing. The second thing is, depending on the tape or the tape machine or the speed of the tape, this is going to add character to the sound as well. But we're after the saturation. Saturation is what happens before distortion. And we need to add we need to understand what distortion does to the sound. So just imagine like you're strumming an acoustic guitar. You just strum the acoustic guitar and you can hear the 6 strings, right? Now imagine that you are performing like a power chord in that same acoustic guitar. You're gonna be able to hear the 3 strings, right? Now if you add distortion to that acoustic guitar, or you add distortion to a guitar, an electric guitar, when you strum the power chord, it sounds like a block of sound, right? All of a sudden you don't hear the 3 different strings, you hear like a one note, like a one big thick note. That's what distortion does to the sound. It kind of like blends things together. Now, before distortion, there's saturation. Saturation is between clean and distorted. There's a little bit of saturation. And in a context like this, where we have a template, and it's not a real orchestra performing them all at the same time, them all together, we're going to add a little bit of tape saturation. We're going to choose tape saturation because it's very pleasant. You could use tube saturation, something like this as well. But tape saturation works really well. It's going to lift the sound a little bit, but most important, because of the character that's going to add to the sound, but most importantly, that very, very subtle saturation, it's going to make it the sound of your template a little bit more cohesive. It's going to not blend, but it's going to make the sound, or like the combination of all this, the sound that you've got in your template, feel like part of one thing. Then later on in the game, we're gonna add reverb, which is gonna also help, them like feel like they are all playing in the same space at the same time. But this is the first step on achieving that feeling of them all playing at the same time in the same space, right? Okay, so we've got balance with B. We've got the to level to balance the template. So we use gain for this. You can use volume if you want, meaning you can use volume instead. I use balance, personal choice, but whatever works best for you. I prefer using gain because then I control the gain input if I've got any dynamic plugin inserted here. But number 1, balance. Number 2, EQ to avoid frequency stacking. Number 3, tape saturation to make the sound a little bit more cohesive, to lift up the sound a little bit. And number 4, as equally as important as, or even more important than EQ to avoid frequency stacking, is in between balance and EQ, in my opinion. We're gonna have a little bit of panning. as you can see. Now this panning is not a stereo balance panner, it's a stereo combined panner. Meaning it is not balanced like this. It is a stereo combined panner. So you have control over the right side and the left side of the mix. And you can mix this like this, or you could even invert the panning like this if you want. You've got more control, more flexibility. This panning is huge. It is really important. So, but begs the question, well, the libraries that I use, the way the instruments got recorded, they already sound to the left or to the right because it's the way they got recorded. They set up the mics here in the center, and then they already sound to the left or to the right wherever they should sound. Yes, while this is 100% right, it's still the frequencies. See the orchestral mockups or orchestral programming. When we compose in the box, we said it's always going to sound thicker, right? Because we are stacking. So when I'm just gonna say it this way, it is, even though when the orchestra gets recorded, or when each one of the sections gets recorded for these libraries, they already position it, and when you load, the instrument already sounds in that position, we still are going to close a little bit the mix, because panning is one of the most efficient ways to gain sonic space while doing it in a way that is very pleasant for the human ear. Meaning, when we are EQing, like this, for example, for the cellos here, as soon as I go beyond 3-4 dBs, and obviously if I go beyond like 9 dBs, I'm going to completely destroy the sound. And especially in an orchestral context, we need to keep the sound very, very natural, very realistic generally. And so, and by cutting 9 dBs or 3 or 4, what we have gained in terms of like sonic space for the rest of the mix is so small. It's really so small. But if we go beyond 3 dBs, it's going to be too noticeable. It's going to affect the sound too much in a bad way. On the other hand, when we play around with panning, obviously this would be too much here. We don't want to be as exaggerated, but look at this. I'm gonna activate and deactivate this. It is definitely noticeable, but it's in a very subtle way, and we literally have gained so much space. Like we've eliminated sound, a 28% of the sound on the left side and 12% of the sound on the right side. That is a lot. The difference is subtle, but the difference is good, because this is what this is gonna do is when we narrow the panning a little bit and then reposition where that instrument should sound naturally, we're gonna gain space. And when we do this in each one of the tracks, we're gonna make our sound more clear, we're gonna gain clarity, it's gonna sound wider, and it's going to allow the rest of the instruments to cut through the mix a little bit better. And that is fantastic. That is great. That's exactly what we want. So that is the fourth thing that you would be doing after, balance with B, EQ, panning, and then tape saturation. The panning is going to happen at the tracks level, as you can see here, and then we'll refine it a little bit more again at the groups level, as you can see here. All right, so we're more than halfway through the video. We've covered the most important part, which is the behind the scenes from the tracks. Now, moving to the groups, what we're trying to achieve, the goal here at the tracks level is, one, balance, and second, avoid frequency stacking. The goal at the groups level is in the groups is where we take care of the mix. We are mixing our music with groups. That is why we discussed earlier, like, how many groups do I need to have? And I said, the least amount of groups, the better, because simplicity, but the more you simplify, the less flexibility you're gonna have when it comes to mixing, right? So find the right amount of groups for you that make this the template as simple as possible, but gives you enough flexibility when it comes to mixing. So here at the groups level, this one in darker blue, is where, and don't worry about the specific plugins. We'll talk more in detail about this when I walk you step by step to build your own template. But here's where we're going to have compressors for percussion, maybe a little bit of kind of like tubes saturation to lift up or to add a little bit of brightness to the strings. Sometimes I like to open the strings a little bit, things like this. This is S1 from Waves. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of extra tape saturation. I like this for the ARP in particular. A little bit of extra EQ when I need to shape the sound in a specific way. Okay, this is a very important part of the process, but we'll spend more time here with a specific guidance and step by step when I help you build your own template. Okay, moving on to the second important part in the groups is going to be the sends. So here again, in the groups is where the mix happens. We're gonna have plugins like compression, what we just showed, but also here's where we also have all the sends to the reverbs set up, as you can see here. Again, I'll explain this step by step and with more detail later on when we are building the template, but this is where, for example, if we've got horns, we're gonna have the horns group. We're gonna set up a send that goes to this effects group here, right here, this one. So here's my brass reverb, the good old IR1 from Waves with a whole impulse response with nice even decay that I personally like for brass. But if we are talking about higher strings like violins, this is gonna go to, first of all, this kind of like a scoring stage type of reverb, or kind of like room reverb, and then it's gonna hit the second reverb because this one is set up here. The first goes to seventh heaven, and then it goes here to these cinematic rooms, slightly longer, like 2.3 seconds reverb. And then because this is routed to the orchestra stem here, and the orchestra stem has one extra reverb send, this one is this one here. So different configurations based on each one of the groups, but all these groups, they have a specific, some of the groups have a specific census, specific reverbs. The reverbs are routed to the master, but because we can, when exporting, select this setting, we can also print the reverbs, not just to the master, but by staging the export, they can also get printed here in the stems. We discussed this earlier in this video. Now, with that being discussed, let's move to the stems. So if at the tracks level, we are taking care of balance and avoiding frequency stacking. At the groups level, we're taking care of the mix with all the plugins that we've got inserted and with all the reverb sends. At the stems level, we're taking care of mastering. Here's where we're gonna be mastering our music. And as I've repeated several times, we're gonna go more in detail when we are building the template. But in this case, for the interest of time, I'm gonna simplify explaining mastering for casual music. Generally, what we want is a little bit of compression to control dynamics, a tad of saturation to lift up the sound a little bit, and then we're gonna add a little bit of brightness. Okay, there are a few more things, but essentially these are the most important ones. So at this point, and because I've got the template set up the way I have it set up, and also because, again, the sum of the stems should sound exactly the same as the master, if we add these mastering plugins here at the master bass, then this is going to affect the sound of the master bass, but not the stems. And potentially, this could be solved the same way with this solution, but because this set of plugins are very efficient, and also I do have a slightly different mastering in each one of the stems, which gives me a little bit more of richness, I decided to keep them there. And these are for the percussive stems. First, I have a little bit of multiband compression. I do not compress the melodic stems like orchestra and things like this. Then I have a second round of, this is not really compression because this doesn't almost never kick in. This is the Shadow Hills mastering compressor. And it just it processes the sound in such a beautiful way. It adds not just a tad of very subtle compression, but it also just adds a little bit of definition and character to the sound. It also it opens the sound a little bit, and it feels like adds a little bit of depth as well. So it just it colors the sound in a very beautiful way, very pleasant, and works fantastic for orchestral music. Then I've got a little bit of J37, just a little bit of tape saturation. We've talked about this earlier. And finally, just a tad of Exciter, or here's Fresh Air. It's a free plugin that's going to brighten the sound a little bit. Be careful with this and keep it as low, because this is very pleasant when you add, but it becomes too much quickly. So that's it. With that, we've taken a look at the groups, stems, reverbs, groups, stems, reverbs, master as well, where the mastering happens. We've also taken a look at the tracks. We now understand what are the goals, what we're trying to achieve in each one of the stages: balance, frequency stacking, mix, mastering. The next step, it's going to be, I'm gonna take you through a journey from the track level, and we'll select one instrument, for example, violins one. So from the track level, right, what did we do in terms of balance? What did we do in terms of EQ? What did we do in terms of saturation, tape saturation, the routing, what group exactly, what is the processing, the mixing, what plugins do we have inserted here, what send do we have, what reverb or reverbs in the send, and after that, what stem and what is the plugin chain that's processing at the stem and then to the master. Now, before we do that, let's go back and let's talk about the 50,000 foot view of the front end of the templates real quick, which is this part here. So as you can see, my template at the beginning, I have a series of what I call sketching patches or fast action patches. These ones here. These are the tracks that I recommend you to have in the sketching patches or fast action patches section. It's a full orchestra long notes, sustain, and full orchestra short notes, the staccatos. So something like this, right, for that fast action type of result. Same thing for sustains, that the other one was staccatos or short notes. This one is for sustains. Notice that these are very ensemble type of patches, right? So full orchestra, and here we'll continue to ensemble type of patches like strings long notes, string short notes, brass long, brass short, woods long, woods short notes. So a few examples of this: woods short notes, right, or longs. This one, etc. A few more. Then still inside the fast action patches, I like to have a patch that combines all the percussion instruments and also kind of like a piano, choir. I like to have like an epic horns section, epic trumpets, things like this. These are like if you just had this set of tracks for composing, could you still make it happen? Like, could you? That's the intention. Or if you need to sketch something real quick, this is like what these tracks are here for. But yeah, as I said, some sort of like a choir track, the piano that we mentioned, then epic horns that we talked about. This is this guy here. Yeah. Then after this set of sketching patches or fast action patches that contains these ones and these ones, I like to have a series, like if I just had 10 tracks for strings, something like this, which ones would be? Like, well, these ones are the ones that I think are the most important, or at least for the type of music that I write. So these ones, to be completely honest, I find myself, while I have access to these string basics, these ones that you see here, I generally find myself using more, and which one, like these are like high, they're called the small staccatos, but it's basically high string staccatos, low string staccatos, high string staccatos in octaves, right? Here are the low string staccatos. So, right, this guy here, it's a little bit too loud, I'm sorry, but same thing with high string staccato. So it's more like ensembles divided, high and low, things like this, right? But I generally find myself using more the individual sections, so violins, one short notes, right? Rather than, and this is from Cinematic Studio Strings. So again, I find myself more using the individual sections than these ones generally, but these come very handy, especially at the beginning when you have a small template. Then moving on, the next group would be what I call orchestral enhancers, or in other words, it's more like percussive instruments. So like the basic percussion, but it also includes celesta, arp, etc. So again, this all comes, and this is what I recommend when you are starting out, when you don't have to, okay, you do not need to start creating that big, massive template. You start with having a small little template with as little tracks as possible, few tracks as possible. And so it has to be a template that follows the 80-20 rule. What are the 20% of the tracks that I could load that would allow me to compose 80% of the music that I need? That's what we're talking about. And that's why the sketching patches, string basics, and orchestral enhancers. Just with these tracks, you'll be able to write a ton of music. These are some of the orchestral enhancers, this section in green here, but the celesta, the arp here, timpani hit, sub bomb here, this guy here. The sub bomb is an old patch from the old library Drums of War from Cine Samples. And this concludes the most important part of the front end of the template, right? We've discussed sketching patches, string basics, orchestral enhancers. Sketching patches, okay, here. String basics, here. And then down below here in green, got the orchestral enhancers. On top of that, then I've got, my kind of like strings standard. Got, and this is most of it. Violins, two short notes, for example, is Cinematic Studio Strings. But then scrolling down a little bit here, I've got the strings advanced. These are extended techniques, like, well, got effects, things like this. And I'll have this one is like super sul tasto. like super soft kind of sound. We've got the flautandos, also soft. Then a few more things. We've got tremolo sul ponticello. Usually the extended techniques I use the Spitfire symphonic strings, but this one sounds like this. For more eerie textures. Then after this, I've got the kind of like more modified or hybrid sounding strings, like ultra low strings. In this particular, it's from Soft String Textures. These are I also have this one, unstable strings. Wobbly strings. So this kind of thing, right? And then down below here, I've got other string libraries again, separated by articulation from other libraries that I like. So for example, I've got the short strings from Cine samples, Cine strings, which I like very much for the attack, the aggression, the brightness, and the bite that it has. And I particularly like the version 1.0, which is the first release for this staccato specifically. I obviously have the 1.4 as well as the 2. In the 2, they cleaned up the sounds a little bit, and we lost a little bit of that character from the staccatos that I like very, very much. So it's pretty bright, and I like it for accenting and for layering on top of another library's staccatos. So it's very specific. I like it very much for specific uses. Then if we continue down below, I've got another string libraries. And so then we go to brass. For brass, I mainly use the Cine brass. Here are the trombones, for example. They've got monster brass, which is always fun. It's so big. Like, it's just too much. Right, and so for long notes as well. Things like this. The massive brass, low brass patch. Woodwinds, here I use Cine winds for this. This is a 2 flutes patch. And the 2 bassoons here. And the contrabassoon is particularly nice as well. Then I've got ensemble woodwinds for ensemble woodwinds, but also very useful scales, tonal ribs, like, or atonal ribs, which are very nice. Some, zebra synths and pulses down here, things like this. Right. Maybe some pads. All that good stuff. Then I've got all the epic percussion down here. Like, gonna have here all the Titan ensemble with the rolls. This is again all drums of war and Armageddon, things like this. For the rims, or here the rims. also the low stuff. Then I think I'm gonna move this guy over here. Moving down in this, got all the hybrid and all the trailer stuff like Brahms. Sorry, this is loud. And downers. It's like this. The Brahms was from Keep Forest, and the downer was from Audi Imperia, I think. Yes. And then we've got all the fun with the pulses and all that good stuff. This one, for example. Right. So that's it. That's my template. So we looked at the back end. Tick. We got the front end. Tick. And now we're going to follow all the signal flow from beginning to end. We're going to start with, we're going to go with violins long, then we'll do epicorns, and then the sub bomb. All right, let's do violins one long notes. So we've got this track here. All right, this is Cinematic Studio Strings. This track, if we go here, we'll see that is routed to the strings long high. If we open this guy, we're gonna be able to see the path. So first we have a little bit of EQ, as you can see here. Then we have a little bit of tape saturation. So the EQ without. See, that's a little bit of top end to the mix, and also cleans up a little bit of the muddy area. So then we also have a little bit of tape saturation. It lifts the sound and it adds a little bit of width. Then after this goes to the strings long high group, which is this one over here. This one. The first thing that's happening here is we are adding a little bit of black box, which is a little bit of tube saturation. As you see, it brightens the sound a little bit, which is very much needed. Usually with sampled strings, they sound a little bit mellow and dull. And so to emulate a little bit more of the live strings sound, this helps a lot. This is the black box with the preset mix bass, the number 17, and I brought down this one from 48 or something like this to 22. Then moving on, we have a little bit also, I close the strings, the panning here, as you can see. It repositions very so slightly the strings a little bit, not big difference, but we are gaining a little bit of space as we described at the beginning. And then one of the most important things, it's the reverbs. So this is going, we described this earlier, but this is the dry sound. Then we are sending it to the seventh heaven, which is this one here. It adds sort of like, so without, with. It provides a little bit with that kind of like room sound. We will talk more about this later on, but seventh heaven, it's kind of like a convolution reverb, something in between a convolution reverb and an algorithmic reverb. But it's but in here we are emulating as if as if we're putting these samples into a scoring stage type of sound. But why do you add reverb to the strings, or why do you add reverb on top of a sound that has been already recorded in a room that already has reverb? It's just the way it's done in cinematic music. Yes, it gets recorded in a space that has reverb, and then on top of that we add reverb. And you would say, yes, but with an algorithmic reverb, that would be enough. Yes, but generally, especially when mixing orchestral mockup, when mixing music that has been produced in the box. Generally, we're gonna add on top of the sound that is already wet because it has been recorded in a room, in a big room, in a big space, in a scoring stage, and already has kind of like that big room type of sound, bigger space, bigger scoring stage type of sound. On top of that, generally, we're gonna add two reverbs. First, a convolution reverb. You can use something like Altiverb or East West Spaces or something like Seventh Heaven. And if you are using Altiverb, you can use the 20s, like the Tateo impulse response or the 20th Century Fox, something like this. If you're using Spaces, I think it's called Culver City or Santa Monica Culver City scoring stage, which I think it emulates the MG the Sony scoring stage. So anyway, a convolution reverb first, and then on top of that, an algorithmic reverb, which is the second send that we have here. So if we activate this one, see it's hitting this one, which is cinematic rooms with this legato hall patch. But that's a little bit of longer tail on top of what we already had. So without, it feels more like a room reverb. And now, so it adds some extra immersive sound, in my opinion, on top of what we already had. And then finally, this goes to the orchestra stem. In this orchestra stem, we've got the mastering plugins, which I'll show in a second. But then we also have a little bit more of reverb. So this one hits the orchestra reverb, which is this one here. It's a cinematic room legato hall. And this just adds a tad, not much. But it helps putting all the orchestral instruments in one place, sort of thing. Now I'm gonna deactivate all the inserts here in the orchestra stem because these are the mastering plugins. Let me deactivate them like this. So first of all, we're gonna have shadow hills. Then we're gonna have a little bit of J37. This definitely lifts the sound a little bit, but also adds a little bit of a character and width. Then we have Soothe. I like this one. It cleans up some of the mid-low frequencies, this guy here. This is not mandatory, but I like it very much. So this is very subtle with one instrument, but it's very effective. All the combination of all the things that I'm explaining when you've got the orchestra, all the orchestra performing at the same time, you've got all these tracks stacked. And then finally, we've got this one that should have been deactivated the whole time, but it's active, which is Fresh Air. It brightens the sound. That's it. Let's move on to the next instrument, which is Epic Horns. I'll move faster with this one because it's very similar, but let's just start with, we've got the track here. This is the track. This is the patches that I've got loaded here. All right, cool. So the trick with this one is, I think, that it has this patch here from Symphonia that's a staccato marcato kind of thing that helps. It adds that oomph at the beginning of the note. I think if we don't have this one, then it loses that, and then this makes it beautiful. So without. With it just adds that beauty at the beginning, that oomph at the beginning of each note in a very well recorded sample, in my opinion. So after this, then we have a little bit of a cue, as you can see here. So see, softer, and now brighter. And it's not because of these guys, really. This is just like 2 dBs or so. It's because of this one, -3, it cleaned up kind of like the muddy area, which makes so much sense because this is a stack, right? And this is going to be stacking all the samples, gonna create muddiness, so it needs some cleanup here. All right, cool. Then this moves to the group from here to the group here, and the group has nothing, basically just sends a send to the reverb, to the brass reverb that we talked about earlier, this one, which is the, or here, IR, without, still has, well, let me just mute this one. So we still have that room reverb on top of it. So it just makes it a little bit longer. And then this hits the, from the group to the stem here. And the same mastering plugins, I'm not gonna go over them again, but in the send to the orchestral reverb. Without, with. All right, just adds a little bit of just more reverb around it. All right, cool. Let's go with a percussive instrument. And I'm going to go with the one that's the most processed, which is the sub bum. Here, this guy here, sub bum. All right, so number one, here's the sub bum. Ooh, this is loud. Okay, this guy here. Okay, first, this is from Drums of War. All right, so nothing special, but it's a great sound. But I think the most important thing is if we move over the groups, it is this one here. Yeah. So this one has quite a bit of processing. First, we're going to have a multiband compression. So this is going to compress when it goes louder. It's going to compress a little bit. So that's the first thing that we're doing. Second thing, we're compressing even more. Compressing this again. Okay? So just a little bit more compression. And 2 layers of compression because it's a big sound with lots of energy. And then the most important thing is here's low ender. So without low ender, with low ender, it adds this boominess and subsonic frequencies. And this is noticeable in a speaker and headphones, but the speakers is even more noticeable with you've got a subwoofer or something like this. And finally, another layer of multiband compression here at the end. Just one more time. So we're compressing this many times to try and keep it as contained as possible because these low frequencies are very hard to control. So different layers of compression to hopefully keep it as transparent as possible. And from here is going to hit the stem, the percussion. So in this case, not the percussion, but the bass and sub and the subs. And first, we're gonna have a little bit of compression again. So number one, number two is gonna go to Shadow Hills. This one. So without, with. Let's get rid of all of this. Now this one, without, with. More. Next J37, without, with. Cool. Then we're gonna have Sooth. Very subtle. And then finally we're gonna have this one, but no big deal with. Not that big of a difference for this one. But again, this is the mastering plugins and I'm repeating them. Now that I think about it, I could get rid of the fresh air for the bass and subs. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. See, this proves that and this is the end of the video, that the template is an evolution. The template grows as you go. You'll modify, you'll make it more efficient, you'll add things. You're working on a new project and now you need new instruments, new sounds. So it'll evolve. That is why I recommend you starting small. And in that end, with having explained my template, the next thing is going to be create your own. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in the next videos. Let's go. See you there. Today we're going to be talking how to take a beginner's template into something that sounds more professional, that allows us to compose faster. And we will do this, we'll create an entire template under 2 hours, we'll tweak everything. I hope that we can do this. I haven't tested this material, but we'll see. So this is what we discussed last week. Then we kind of like took a look at my template. We looked at the front end, all the sketching patches and all the tracks, all the libraries that I've got loaded, and then we spent some time in the back end. Here's where we took a look at groups, stems, and reverbs, and that is exactly what we're gonna be putting the focus on today. Okay, here's where we are going, because the creation of the template or the loading of the tracks is the easy part. And in fact, we're gonna use a template, a free template from BBC Spitfire, because you don't like that's not the secret is not in what instruments you load or how you load the instruments. In my opinion, the secret is what happens behind the scenes, and that's what we're gonna be working on. Okay, so with that being said, I think there's not much more to cover. This is the goal of today's class. We're going to be talking about how to take an orchestral template from beginner to pro. So let's get this started. BBC Free Orchestra. We're going to start with that, okay? Happy Halloween, by the way, everyone. So we're going to go here, right? I already done this. And this is the BBC Free Orchestra. Just here, it'll show up the button, buy. It's free, $0. Just add it to your cart. Boom, it downloads here in Spitfire's app. Then you can download. And after that, we're going to keep scrolling a little bit. And then you're going to go down here, learn more. So free templates and more. And then you're going to learn more. You're gonna download the template. So there you go. You're here. Download the Spitfire app. Blah blah blah. Let's imagine that we have already bought. It's free. This one, but you have to quote unquote buy it. And then you're gonna go here. Download the template. Boom. We download the template. Cubase in my case, and it downloaded. And then here I'm in Cubase. You just double click this guy, and it'll load. And hey, this is a fantastic starting point. Like there's no excuse why you couldn't compose great music. What we've got here, let me see. We've got longest string, like you just load the thing. And all of a sudden you've got sound, you've got stuff going on here. Let's take a listen to the staccato cello, like short cellos. Let's just start adapting this. So boom. Here's the master. Where's the master? Master. Stereo out. There's this guy here. You are not seeing it. Stereo out. And we're going to add here my low latency. I think it's the ultra. It's the ultra or the multi. I think it's a multi. Yes. Just where's the cellos? Cellos here. Cello short. Cool. All right. Awesome. So this, I'll have it over here to control sound. So we have a template. Already. That's nice. Okay. This is a beginner's template. And you could load, obviously, I used a free library just to show that it's possible. But you could use any of your libraries. Let's make this sound way better. Okay. So we're gonna attack this at the 3 levels, at 3 layers. First, at the track level. At the track level, the goal is going to be to get rid of muddiness and avoid frequency stacking. Okay. And the task that what we're going to be doing is we'll first make sure that it's balanced. Second, pan. So we're gonna open things a little bit. Third, we're gonna EQ, add a little bit of EQ for those muddy areas or for in the irritation or the for the more piercing frequencies at the mid high end. But most of the work is going to be in the mid low area to avoid frequency stacking. And this is going to be as simple as going here or here, and we're gonna start track by track. We're gonna open the EQ and we're gonna go something like, okay, maybe. I'm gonna be like, okay, just a little bit like a dB and a half cut at 219, something like this. And we're gonna do this track by track, okay? Most likely, we're also going to do a little bit of a low cut. In this case, 50 or something like this. Usually something like 36. Where is it? Can do this. 36. So we're gonna be doing this track by track. So this is what this guy here means. EQ. And finally, saturation, we're gonna add a little bit of tape or analog saturation to every one of the tracks as well. At the groups level, and I'll explain this why, but at the groups level, the goal is to improve the mix, to make it sound better, right? So mix, rock and roll. Like, we have to make this sound better. How we're gonna do this? We're gonna set up the reverbs, we're gonna set up the compressors. There's not much that sometimes we may a few other things, right? And others like these guys. Sound a little bit mellow, so we also would brighten things. We may add a little bit. What else? We may open the string sometimes. So with maybe cool small little things like this. Okay, and finally at the stems level, so tracks, groups, stems. The goal here is mastering. So we're gonna set up all the mastering plugins. So this is how it looks like, kind of thing. So if we zoom in a little bit and stop the camera, stop it from moving. Okay, so again, at the track level, gain, so for balance, EQ to avoid frequency stacking, and tape saturation. At the groups level, here's where the mix happens, a little bit of compression and reverb. And at the stems level, here's where the mastering happens, okay? And we're gonna, all this is gonna go to the master track from the stems and the reverbs that are loaded in the groups, or the reverb sends from the groups here. In this drawing, there's not the effects groups, but you get the idea. So let's get started. Let's follow the plan. Number one, tracks, goal, get rid of maintenance, frequency, balance. Let's start with balance. So I like to have one track, which is the one that kind of like sets it's the reference track for balancing everything else. And generally for me, don't ask me why, is the cellos staccatos. And so I'm gonna add 2 asterisks here. So this is the track that sets the balance. So let's get started. Let's get this. Is there anything that we can improve here? Meaning, like, how much can we tweak this? Pretty basic. Do we have? We do not have start time right now. Okay, we've got what we've got. It's a free library. So first of all, I'm gonna make sure that the reverb to all of them is down, which it is, right? But I do not want the reverb that comes from the player, so no reverb to any of them. And in the professional paid libraries, when you click here, right click here, you can define the start time for the sample. And so I think with a little bit of a more space for like the sample start time, it would sound a little bit more realistic. Also, there's I think there's no round robin. I think there's just one sample, one recording. So when you start repeating notes, then it sounds machine gunny kind of thing. Right? So, but it's a free library. So it is what it is. Cool. So let's continue. Okay, so this is I'm gonna balance things. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's too loud, I guess. Minus 20. Let's keep it simple. I just don't want to repeat notes too much, but okay, so that's this. Do-da-dee-da-dum, do-da-dee-da-dum. Let's see how balanced things are. So 1, 2. Yeah, it sounds good. Let's go violins 2. These are a tattoo. Let me see. In my opinion, let's see. So by this is violins 2. Let me. Okay, violins 2. I think, in my opinion, let's just mute them. But I think they are a little bit too high, too hot in the mix. The ones I like. But choose. Are a tad too loud, so we're gonna go here. So this is boring, but we're balancing. So shorts and for violins 2, short notes. I think this should go down a little bit. Now I don't like to, so I like to balance my template in the gains. The reason why is because if I had a dynamic plugin inserted, the gain will affect, or the input will affect, so I have more control if I do it that way. So I'm gonna go here first, and I'm gonna show rags here. Pre, there you go. Pre. So now we're gonna open this guy. There you go, and here's the gain. So we're talking violins 2, and I'm gonna lower it minus 2.5 dBs. There you go. Now a little bit. Let's go minus 1.5. 1.5. All right, cool. Yes, I think it's a better representation. If now we had violins 1 and 2, and then we move these guys up a third. No. Let me move the violins up a third. Makes more sense. I guess. Yes. Okay, cool. Let's see the violas. And you would have to do this track by track. Ooh. I think they are a little bit too loud. In my opinion, they are a little bit too loud. Violas here. Viola. I'm gonna bring this down minus at least 2.5 in this case. I think it will. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. But let's continue. So now we've got what, in my opinion, it's a little bit more balanced. So we brought down violins a little bit. So those are the basic things, but these are important things. So violins 1 dB and a half, and violas staccatos 2 dBs and a half. Let's do a line of the long. We're not gonna balance everything, but we're gonna balance the most important. But at least you see kind of like what the process. Now still, right? We're going to, the reference is still this one. So I'm gonna balance the kind of like long cellos with short cellos kind of thing, and then I'm gonna take this and then I'm gonna balance the rest. Let's see. And I'm trying to keep the velocity kind of like consistent at around, a little bit below 100. And so now as I'm doing this, okay, I think the long notes are a little bit too hot. I think here it would make sense, but I'm kind of like, I'm low in expression here, and kind of low in modulation as well. So dynamics and volume, and so I'm gonna lower the long notes a little bit. So I'm gonna, I think this is at least minus 3. I'm gonna go minus -4. Yes, okay, that works. Let's write some. And by the way, I didn't level the double basses. Yeah. Yeah, I think the cellos are. The double basses are no problem. If so, I would. Nah, they work. I think they work. Cool. Now let's we've balanced the long notes. Let's go with the cellos. Cellos, long notes. That's why it sounded so loud. The click. That was weird. Okay, -11. No. Let's see violas, long notes. So this is now balanced. And then violas. Yeah, I think it works. Let's see. Violins 2. Too loud. Just a tad too loud, violins 2. So we're gonna go here again. This guy at least -3, my opinion. Let's go -4, 5. -4. Just. Yes, okay. And let's see violins 1. Yeah, this works. Violins 1 works. Cool, awesome. So that's the process of balancing, okay? This would be what you would do with the entire. So balance, then I'm just gonna do string short, long, because doing the entire thing would take longer. But this is important, right? Because when you're composing, you want to have everything balanced. And number 2, we're going to let's remind one more time what we're doing here. We're getting rid of muddiness with frequency stacking. We're gonna start with balance because it's important. Let's add balance. Balance. Get rid of muddiness. So balance, let's say done. To get rid of muddiness and avoid frequency stacking, obviously we're gonna do EQ, obviously, right? But something that helps even more than EQ is a little bit of, placing the instruments a little bit. So let's talk about this. Obviously, these the violins already sound to the left. These violins 1. Violins 2, you see, sound a little bit more center, still left, but more center. This is 1, this is 2. And then the violas a little bit more to the other side, right? Cellos even more to the right. Cellos. And then finally double basses. It's a lower sound, so it still has more presence on the side, but because it's a lower sound, it's more omni. Okay. With that being said, still we can place them the instruments. I'm looking for a whiteboard that I haven't used. But we can place instruments left and right a little bit more to gain a little bit of a space. And that's a very common practice, even though the libraries already come with the instruments pre-panned. They already sound where they're supposed to sound. It's a common practice to still move them to do this. Let me show you. To gain a little bit of a space in the left side and the right side. And that gives more at the end because this is not like this is not like an entire orchestra perform. When we are composing an orchestral mockup, it's very different than an orchestra performing live. When an orchestra performs live performs once in one room with a one set of mics. That's it. When we are stacking tracks, is that combination, that orchestra, or that set of mics, or that room stacked over and over and over and over again. So we have to be more cautious because as we start stacking, sometimes the samples will take too much space, and the space in the mix is limited. We've got left to right, we've got depth, and we've got low to high frequencies. That's it. That's the spectrum that we have. As we start adding instruments, we start filling up the space. There's a moment where the space is it's limited and it's done, right? And so the more we add, the more muddy it sounds. So whenever we can remove stuff, then the better. And we're gonna start with the process of removing right now. And you would think it starts with EQing, carving out some frequencies. It's good, but we can do something more efficient. first before EQ, which is panning. Panning sonically for the human ear is very subtle, right? And it feels very natural. It just feels pleasant, even if it's a little bit more drastic. But sonically, in like the how much space a sound is taking has such a big effect, because we truly are eliminating 20% of the space that that sound is taking, and that is what we want. With EQ, we are eliminating maybe 0.5% of the space that this sound is taking. With left to right panning, stereo panning, which is what we're going to be doing, the effect is very pleasant to the human ear, and is very efficient when it comes to is distributing the instruments and how much space we are actually gaining for the mix. So let's do this. So we've got the violins one here. Let's see. Let's open this guide. Okay. So usually this is presented as like this, right? This is balanced. This is not the stereo panning. So we're gonna click here, stereo combined panner, and then we're gonna do something like this. Okay. Maybe left is gonna go 90. Okay, something like this. Now we're gonna go to. Can we copy this? Copy. Yeah, copy standard panner settings. We're gonna paste them here to the staccatos. Paste. Let me see. Paste. Nice. So you can see when as I bypass this, how on the if you're using this is gonna be more subtle, and it's going to be more noticeable using headphones with the speakers. Generally, these changes are a little bit less drastic, but you can see how it the right side gets a little bit more empty of sound in a way, right? Then we lose a little bit of the ambient, which is nice, which is good. It's what we want in this case, in an orchestral mockup or orchestral programming context. It's like the sound is more concentrating in that area, which is where we want the violins one. Now violins two. Let's go here. Violins two. Let's go with short notes. So same thing. I would close this guy a little bit. And this one I'm gonna be a little bit more drastic because it feels a little bit too center for me. So not as much as violins one, but so this one a little bit more drastic because to me violins one, violins two should not feel that big of a difference. So violins one a little bit more to the left, obviously. The violins two a little bit more like center left, but not as center as what I heard here. So let's see violins one, two. Yes, still difference, but good. Obviously, this is a free library. It's correct that we've got this opportunity to use these high quality sounds with a free package. But definitely there are some inconsistencies. That's okay. That's what we are doing, right? So volume inconsistencies, also panning, and also the type of short notes like the violins one and the violins two. This is a spiccato, and violins are both spiccato. But they sound very, very different. Very different, in my opinion. That's okay. It gives us a chance to actually to have two types of short notes. So anyway, this sounds like more like a spiccato, and this sounds more like an staccato. But anyway, cool. All right, moving on. So then we're gonna have the violas. Okay, I like the placement. Oops, I like the placement, but we're gonna close them a little bit just to gain space, as we have said. So it's gonna be kind of like this. Maybe a little bit more to the. So short notes, and then so cello. So the difference, like on the sides, cleaned up a little bit, which is nice. So what we're doing here is small little improvements, but tons of them. So that the small little improvement in isolation, it's a small little nuance, right? It doesn't make that big of a difference, but when you put them all together, it does make a difference. But we're moving step by step, so it takes a little bit of time. So cello, short notes. This is going to be. I don't think we need to open the cellos more, but for sure we're gonna. Great, awesome. We clean up quite a bit the left side. We're losing a little bit of the space, the room sound, and that's okay. That's okay. We will the next step at some point is going to be set up reverbs, and we'll regain a little bit of that, and we'll have a reverb that puts them all in the same place. Cool. All right. And then finally, double bass is not much to do really, but I like to close them just a tad because the bass is the more centered, the better. So let's take a look at this. This guy here. Cool. So let's close this guy. Maybe too much. Maybe too much. Maybe too much in this case. I'm not going to, because I like what it does. Yes. Yes. So like this. Okay, subtle, but kind of it concentrates the power of the low frequencies a little bit more centered. So we've got violins long, short, and then we've got short, and I'm gonna copy, paste for the long, and the same here, short, activate. This is violas, copy, paste, and then for the cellos, copy, just for speed, paste, and finally the double bass is copy. By the way, I could have used we didn't discuss this, but I could have used the key switches version of the library. I didn't because I wanted a little bit more flexibility later on in the groups. It still can be done. But anyway, this is the template that I loaded from them. They've got two versions of the template, just so you know. So copy, paste. Okay, so we've done the work here. Let's see. Let's take a look at this. Not bad. And here. Yep. Not bad. Okay, cool. So for balance, just as a note, balance. Generally, I'm trying to velocity 90. So I try to keep everything at 90 and the expression at kind of like 90, something like this as well. And then with this, I try to balance everything else. But still there is, in another context with mixed libraries, there are libraries I'll balance Cinematic Studio strings, for example, and then I'll balance them at this, right? At the expression 90 or whatever. And I'll balance Abbey Road Orchestra violins 1. But the volume change when you transition between dynamic layers in Cinematic Studio strings, it feels more consistent with Abbey Road Orchestra violins 1, for example. It stays pretty soft at up to like 80% or so, and the last 20%, it's where the fortes and the fortissimos are, and so obviously that's why we have expression. So when we are, this one for me here, expression, CC11, so we can rebalance as we are composing depending on the dynamic layer that we are in and comparing different libraries. Okay, let's continue. So we've got these guys. let's go with that in here. Ah, cool. And double bass works as well. Where are we then? What's the next step? So balance. Let's get rid of muddiness. So next step is going to be to get, so we've done balance, panning, EQ. Let's start getting rid of muddiness. But by the way, panning has helped getting rid of muddiness. Let's do EQ now. Let's start with violins 1. Let's go here. And let's just solo this guy. Yeah. Yeah. So without, with. So it cleans. I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna exaggerate it. See, obviously minus 9 dBs would never cut as much in our orchestral context, but it cleans the sound. It cleans the sound too much at this point. It gets too thin. But at minus 2 dBs kind of thing. See, it gets rid of the woo 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 that we don't want. Without, we can hear the woo 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 too much. We can bring this up a little bit if we want. It feels like the sound is pretty much like they cleaned up the low end, but I generally don't do that as much. Let's just keep it here. All right, cool, awesome. So let's see if we can carry this over. I'm gonna copy EQ settings and I'm gonna paste them here in the long notes. Paste EQ settings, and then I'm gonna activate this, and I'm gonna be minus. Let's start minus 100, 36 dBs. Minus. Oh, sorry, 100. Sorry. So long notes. So. So I want to try different notes, because obviously when you hit the harmonic of that specific note, you hear this. I go, here's where that's what I want to cut, and it's not that. It's not it's generally in the muddy area. Okay, so I think it's around 185, which is very similar to this what we found in the staccato. So we're gonna bring it down. So it's more obvious. So there it is, subtle, and it's more obvious when you stack multiple notes. Because now you're already stacking with multiple notes, right? So one note, no problem. 3 notes. Muddiness already. Let me bring down the volume just a bit. I just brought down, just FYI, I brought down this guy from here to here. So, muddiness. You can see with this chord, which is a C minor chord, second inversion kind of thing, where and you can see when the EQ is not active, so yellow, you can hear more of the MIDI first harmonic of the chord, like this. That's that kind of like MIDI C phantom note. It sounds like this kind of thing, right? And when I activate this, it kind of it disappears a little bit. So with the EQ activated, it feels like a subtle, weird hybrid choir sound underneath. So without. And that's what we are getting rid of, because we don't want that, right? Because that is the byproduct of using sample libraries. That 3 notes is the result of stacking 3 rooms, 3 sets of mics, etc. Okay, and this makes a difference. So we see that in the long notes, we had to cut a little bit more. This is -3. Generally, when working with carving out some frequencies to get rid of muddiness, generally my limit is -3. -3 is as much as I'm gonna be cutting. So EQ, saturation. Okay, let's do a little bit more EQ. Gonna go here. Let's go. So we've done long here. We've got the EQ up here, short. We're gonna do long. Let's test this. Copy. Paste. And then let's activate this at -100. I don't know, minus 100 for whatever reason. And 36. It works pretty good, so I'm gonna keep it the way it is. So I'm gonna go to short. Let's see, copy, paste, 158, 36, activate. E. Yeah. So I could fine tune this for sure, 100%. But for speed, in the interest of time, I'm just going to copy paste. Violins 1, violins 2, same settings, EQ settings. Let's go to now violas. Ooh, the C note is much louder than the D note because you open the string. And so, but I would have loved for this to be a little bit balanced in the. Anyway, let's go here. E. Okay, let's start. Sometimes I just play a cluster to not have those main harmonics too present. But I think this is I think it ended being 222. Let's bring this down. Definitely. Okay, cool. Yes, this works. This works. Cool. Awesome. And again, for the interest of time, I'm gonna copy this to the staccatos. You shouldn't do this, but copy EQ, paste, and I cut at 100 again. 100 and minus 36. Let's go to staccatos. Let's see. Let's bring up the volume. Yeah, I think it works. Let's see. I think I've got, this is rare, but I'm gonna cut at 2, and I'm gonna cut again at, let me just this one, boom. At the lower 300 cycles, so 308. So I've got these 2. Now I guess this is gonna have to be a little bit of a higher Q, because now I've got 2 of them, and I'm gonna lower them at -2 and -2. Let's start here. Yes. Much better. Look at this. Without. With. See? The same thing. So, cool. Awesome. So there you go. Got the cellos here. I think this one is going to be a little bit wider than usual. So it's going to be 0.5. And this is going to go down. I found it at 170. Generally, it's more closer to 200. Oh yeah, yes, 100%. Cool. Let's see. I'm not gonna cut much here, okay? And this is it's not 36, it's 24 dBs per octave. Definitely, it helps a lot. Without. Great, beautiful, nice, cool. Let's see if we get lucky. Copy, paste. 2E2 staccatos, and this was 40, and then 12. Let's see. And you're not seeing this guy. think it does a good job. Pretty good. I could spend a little bit more time tweaking this, but I'm gonna go with this. Let's go with the double basses that you are not seeing, but this guy here. I'm gonna go with okay, we're gonna go here. So remember, we're going for the MADI frequency. We're not here to kind of like kill the subsonic or the, you know, sub. This is no problem. It's this kind of sound what we are looking for. The muddiness. Okay. These guys. We went a little bit too aggressive. Let's do -2 here. To low cut. Okay, cool. I think it works. I spent a little bit more time here, so I'm just gonna copy and paste for the interest of time. Copy paste here, and this is what I'm doing. I just copied and pasted this guy from here to here. I'm gonna do -25, so 25 dBs or 25 cycles, and for these guys, there you go. I think it does a pretty good job. Could work on this, but I think it does a pretty good job. Let's take a listen to this. And okay, cool. Getting there. And so we have done this balance. We have done pan. We have done EQ. Obviously, we would have to do the entire orchestra, but for now, we're doing the strings. And finally, we're gonna do a little bit of saturation. And this is gonna be very subtle, but it helps putting things together. This is gonna be the smallest of the tweaks that we're gonna make, but still important. Saturation is going to be here in the channel strip. Here, strip. There you go. So we don't need to see the EQ. Now we're gonna be working on the sense. I still want to see the sense. This book. Okay. So a little bit of saturation, and we're gonna add magneto 2. Magneto 2. Something like this. Yes. It lifts up the sound a little bit, which is what I want. Ooh. So good. Like small, but definitely meaningful. So without. Just perfect. And so copy. So here's what I'm gonna do. For the interest of time, I'm gonna select all the tracks like this. I'm going to Option Shift, which is Q-Link, Option Shift. So, and then we're gonna go saturation. Here we're gonna select magneto 2. Wait for it. Boom. All right. And now we're gonna bring up saturation at a similar. How much was this? 41. Okay. I'm gonna bring them all up. 41. 41. 41. Okay. And then for the short, this one went 41. All right. That's it. Let's compare. Let's loop it. So this is gonna go J. It's gonna go a little bit here. So there you go, just a tad. It makes the sound a little bit more cohesive. It brightens it a little bit. It feels a little bit wider, a tad wider, and it lifts up the sound. That's also a little bit of air, and kind of like obviously brightens the top end a little bit. This particular tape saturation emulation here. So now we're gonna do the same with these guys. So there you go. So you add this plugin to all your tracks in your template. Or in this case, it's not even a plugin. It's part of the channel strip, and you can emulate something similar with something like J37. This is what we are doing essentially. See. Thing like this. Okay, so you can do the same thing. I like the thing about J37 is that it's gonna add 2.1 milliseconds of latency or to your system, and I don't like that. But that's okay. 2.1 is not that much, and it'll take more CPU processing than the built-in or the stock plugins from Cubase. So no effect. Okay, cool. Next step is going to show saturation. Boom. Now, next, mix. Gonna improve the mix. So we're gonna set up reverbs, set up compressors, and maybe brighten things a little bit. And we're staying with the strings the entire time because it is where it's for the interest of time. So we started with a balance here at the gain level. Then we did this guy here, panning. This was a stereo panning. The next step has been EQ. We've got the EQs here with some cuts and some carping out of frequencies in the mid-low range, and then here, and then finally we added a little bit of magneto, a little bit of tape saturation, and this is once again at the tracks level, and the goal is balance, get rid of mattiness, and avoid frequency stacking. Now we're gonna move to the groups, which we haven't created yet. So the goal here is to improve the mix. So here we're gonna set the groups, set up groups, set up reverbs. This is going to be in the effects groups. We're gonna set up compressors, right? And let's get started because this is gonna take some time. So let's make this a little bit smaller. Okay, cool. So small. All right, so now next we are going to create the effects tracks. Sorry. Let's start with the groups. So add group track, and this is going to be, and here's where we're gonna have the group. So I like to have strings, long, high. This is gonna go to the, okay, this is what, let's discuss real quick what we're gonna create here. So we're gonna have we're gonna have the stem, we're gonna have stems, and we're gonna have groups. For the stems, we're gonna have orchestra and synths. And obviously we still don't have synth sounds and things like this, but for now, since you're gonna have perk, we're gonna have case. Let's start with this. Usually I have 6. Okay, many composers will have 6. It's very standard to deliver 6 stems to that mix. For now, we're gonna create 4. And for groups, we're going to have strings, high, short, strings, high, long, strings, low, short, low, long. Cool. So that's that. Then we're going to have another smart separation, but for the woodwinds short, woodwinds long, brass short, brass long. It could be different. Okay, you can have more groups. I choose to have these ones just for now. Okay, brass long, short, and then percussion high, percussion mid, percussion low. This will keep things organized. When we've got a template like this, to be honest, it doesn't make that big. That doesn't make that, it's how many tracks we've got? 47. And we've got already like 10 groups, so it doesn't make that big of a difference. Groups is to keep things organized. So if you've got 700 tracks, if you have 40 groups, then it makes sense, right? Because you're grouping things. But having 40 tracks and 20 groups, it makes no sense. All right. So we don't need that much separation, but we're gonna go for it anyway. Cool. All right. So obviously this one is going to go to orchestra, to orchestra stem, etc. See, boom, 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 boom. Work. Okay, let's build this. I'm gonna go here because I move faster. So number 1, and then we're gonna have 3. Let's go with this. Again, this could be different, but for now, this is an example. Okay, this will customize your sound so you can customize this to your needs. Let's build this. So stems. So this is going to be group tracks. So we're gonna have orch. By the way, these guys go to master. Boom, 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 boom. All right, orchestra. Let's create. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do this as fast as possible. Okay, group tracks, orchestra, perk, synths, case. Cool, awesome. These are the stems. Let's call them stems. And now we're going to create effects. And we said we're gonna have 3. And this is gonna be burp. So this is gonna be short, burp, mid, long. Cool, all right. And I like to Okay, I'll add these two here because they are already configured. This convolution, I think. Cool. So we've got here, you can delete this guy. And then we're gonna have the groups. So I'm gonna duplicate this one. See, I'm gonna put it here. And this one is going to go direct routing to, not the stereo out, but to the orchestra. So orchestra, and this is going to be a folder track. These are groups. This is gonna go in here. Oops, in here. So this is strings, strings high short, boom, long, strings low short, and the strings low long. Now we're gonna go with woodwind. So I'm gonna duplicate this one, duplicate and duplicate. Woodwinds short and woodwinds long. And this is going to be brass short, brass long. And then we're gonna 1, 2, 3. And this is perk, high, perk, mid, perk, low. And this guy is going to go to percussion. This as well. Percussion. I could have done. Okay, that's it. Nice. Okay, cool. So now I have to route these things. So if I go violins long, violin and violas long, these all go to select output. This is going to go, so option shift for queuing, see? And now you're gonna go this strings high long. Boom, there you go, strings high long, fantastic. All the violins short, pizzicatos, and what's tremolo? I'm gonna consider tremolo longs. So long, if it's a measured tremolo, sometimes I consider it short. So in this case, these guys are also going to go to, by the way, that was loud, to strings high long, shift, boom, there you go. Now we're gonna go for short pizzicato, and short pizzicato, and these are going to go to high short. Okay, so we've got long, short, short, long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short, long. Perfect. And now we're gonna go with violoncello long notes and tremolo, as well as double basses long. And what? There's no tremolo? No tremolo. Okay, whatever. And then we're gonna go here to strings low, long. And now we're gonna select cello short and pizzicato and double bass short and pizzicato. And these are all going to go to strings long, short. So here, long, short, short, long, long, short. Yes, it makes sense. There you go. Let's see if this is true. Yes, short and short. Great. And so I'm gonna solo double basses. Yeah, it's going to the short. Great. Nice. Let's go here. Great. So these are the highs and the lows going here. Highs. Sorry. High. And then they hit the orchestra, and then from the orchestra goes to the master. Here, the master. And because now we've got the reverb set up here, this is a convolution reverb, for example, this guy here. Now we can, for example, go for the strings high long that will accept more reverb. We can set up here a send that goes to this, where is it? Convolution reverb, for example, which is this guy here. And we can activate this and which is too much, obviously, but we can bring this at -12. We go with this guy. Just a tad less. I think -15. And we can add a second reverb. Have to set them up tomorrow, but we've got this algorithmic reverb, which is this guy here. These are all free reverbs. Yes, maybe we can make it a little bit longer. Too much. So now it's going to be -10. Yes. And then there's work that I've got to do here. Tomorrow we're gonna be setting up reverbs because I need EQ before the reverb and dynamic EQ after the reverb, and then we're gonna be working out in the rest of the mix in the groups. This part here, compressors, etc. And then we're gonna go to the stems, which are these guys here. These orchestral percussion scenes and keys. These guys, and we're gonna be working on the mastering. We're gonna compress, saturations, brighteners, etc. And with that, we should have all these worked out. Today we're going to be talking about template stuff like we've been doing over the past couple of classes. We set up this last week. This represents the tracks in a template like these guys here. And this is my template. This is not what we were working on last week. This is my template. And then we set up all the EQs like this in each one of the tracks, as well as a little bit of analog saturation for each one of the tracks. EQ to get rid of a little bit of the frequency stacking. If we go here, we balance the tracks first with gain to have all the template balanced. Then we add a little bit of EQ to avoid frequency stacking. And then we add a little bit of tape saturation to lift the sound. So now we're going to be working on the groups. We're going to set up all the groups, and this is going to look something like this. And this is my template. I'll go back and open the project that we were working on last week. But we're gonna set up all the groups. So the string short high, string short low, etc. And then we're gonna add a few plugins and whatnot to this. The goal of this is going to be to have our template mix the music that we're composing for us automatically. And then we're gonna create the stems, which is this. If we go here, the stems, so we're gonna go from tracks to groups to stems, right? We're gonna have hundreds of tracks generally, then we're gonna have like 20 or 30 groups, and then we're gonna go down to generally 3 to 6 stems, orchestra, percussion, scenes, keys, something like this, which in this template is, you can see here, these are my stems, and basically we're going to route everything from here to the stems, and this will allow us to, when we are done composing, we can export and select, okay, export master and stems, and this is what you can send to DAP. Okay, so that's that. These are the stems. Also, we're going to be setting up the reverbs, all the effects groups. The effects groups in my template are these guys here in purple faders. These are the effects groups, and here's where we have all the reverbs set up. So Seventh Heaven, Cinematic. We're gonna be using. We also have Valhalla, etc. So this is the goal. This is the goal that we have for today. So this is a template from a movie that I'm working on right now. And so this is organized, as you can see here, with a movie, dialogue, and temp up here. And here's where I've got the markers. We are not going to set up this part. We'll do this in a different video. But here's the markers, tempo, and all that good stuff that we need when we are doing film scoring. I'm gonna close this one, close. And we're gonna open recent and the one that we were working on. So template is opened and ready here. So this is what we were working on last week. We had all the tracks loaded here. We used a template again. We were using BBC. We downloaded the template from their websites, and they give you this template, which is awesome. And then we're improving this. This is what downloading a template generally, or just loading the tracks. Doing this part here, loading all the tracks. It is part of the game when setting up a template. And at this point, you've got a beginner's template, in my opinion. Right. The next step is what we are doing to improve the sound, automate the mix, add all the mastering plugins, and so when you are composing, you are not just composing with the templates doing the work for you, so it improves the sound and blah, blah, blah. You can compose faster, more efficiently, and so that's what we are doing. So here are the groups. So we've got all the groups here. These are the groups, and we created the strings high, short, strings high, long, strings low, short, strings low, long, the woodwinds short, woodwinds long, brass short, brass long, percussion high, mid, low. Okay, cool. I think that's good. So with that, we can go here and we can route everything. Let's start with this. So we've got piccolo, longs, piccolo, short. Okay, so we're gonna have the piccolo, long, flutes, long, oboes. This is long as well, yes. And then we're gonna have clarinets long and bassoons. No, clarinets is still high. So all these, I'm gonna now go Option Shift for queuing or queuing, right? For Control Shift, and then we're gonna send all this not to master, but this is going to go to woodwinds what? Woodwinds long. Great. And now we're gonna select piccolo short, flute short, oboe short, clarinet short, and bassoon short, by the way. I missed this one. And this one is gonna go to woodwinds short. The others, including the bassoon that I didn't, has to go to woodwinds long. Okay, awesome. So I've got the piccolo long here. Now I play piccolo. Goes to the woodwinds long, and then it hits the orchestra stem. Makes complete sense. Awesome. Let's continue. Now let's move to horns long, trumpets long, trombone long, bass, trombone long, and tuba long. This is going to go to... Why do we separate long and short notes? Because usually long notes we can add a little bit more of reverb, and for short notes we can add just a tad less reverb, especially for ostinatos and things like this. It will help with clarity. So again, Control Shift, gonna go here, and this is going to be brass long, and now we're gonna select this one, and all the shorts. This is gonna go to brass short. Then we're gonna go to arp celesta. Arp celesta. What do we have here? Here's what I like to do. Visibility. We're gonna have, so in visibility, zones, channels, zones. Here we're gonna have the stems here. Boom, boom, boom. We're gonna have the reverbs. No, not the reverbs. The stereo out there. Fantastic. Yes, stereo out, and not the reverbs. These, not these guys. Boom. Okay, cool. And we don't need the click, no need to, and we don't even need to see the click. So we're gonna go to channel, and we don't need to see the click. Okay, out. Great. Zones. So here the groups, we've got synths and keys. Keys, fantastic. You know what? We're gonna have the arp, celesta, go to keys. I know that the arp is not the keys, but I'm just gonna put it there for now. Yes. So these two guys are going to go to keys. No, not to keys. Sorry. Let me see. These are not the stems. So we're talking about groups. So we're gonna have celesta. Yeah, I'm gonna create a group for this. That's okay. We could have more separation, but for now I'm gonna create a group that is going to be something that would be duplicate. So I'm gonna duplicate this track. Something like piano, and then keys. That works. Back here, so we can have the celesta. Celesta could be percussion, but I'm gonna have the arp. Yeah, arp and celesta are gonna go to keys and others. Could be, you can organize this however you want. Keys and others. And then we've got, what is this? Untuned percussion. What do we have here? Let's see. So we've got high, and you know what? I'm going to... This is how I would like to do this. I'm gonna close this, untuned percussion. I'm gonna duplicate this guy, and this is gonna be the high. Untuned perc high. Copy, paste, low. And so here I'm just gonna use for things like this, and this one I'm just gonna use for the low percussion. Okay. And this obviously is gonna get routed. It's gonna be routed to this. Is gonna go the high. It's gonna go to percussion high, and this is gonna go to percussion low. Percussion low. Timpani, tubular bells, I'm gonna consider this one mid, percussion mid. We could separate these different ways, but marimba. I could give this a different name. You know what? I'm gonna have the xylophone, glockenspiel, marimba, going to keys and others. Keys and others. This guy here. And I'm gonna go tubular bells. Is going to be mid percussion. I don't know if it's the best. This is something that you're going to be, once you have the template set up, you'll see inconsistencies, things that you don't quite like, routings that don't quite work, and it's something for you to decide later on. And timpani, I'm gonna have it percussion low. I think it makes sense. All right, cool. If we go here, And we look down here while I play the timpani. Exactly, percussion low. If I select percussion low here, the Grand Casa goes to percussion low. Great. If I go to percussion high here, this is going to percussion high. If I've got the tubular bells, goes to percussion mid. Great. Xylophone. Keys and others. Glockenspiel. And marimba goes here to keys and others. Great. Awesome. Now for the strings, I think we're already... They already routed. We routed this last week. So violins 1 long goes to strings high long, and then pizzicatos for the, let's say, cellos pizzicatos are going to go to strings low short. Makes complete sense. And double bass is pizzicato. Great. Strings low short. Fantastic. So that's step number 1. We routed the different tracks to the right groups. Okay, cool. Next, we're gonna set up the... And let's just remind one more time what we're trying to do here. So we have tracks, groups, stems, and master. This is the signal flow. We go from tracks, and the tracks, the goal is to avoid frequency stacking. That's why we have an EQ in each one of the tracks. The tracks are these guys here. Then after this, we also balance with gain, and then we add tape saturation to lift the sound. Each one of the tracks. Okay, so balance and frequency stacking. I should have also highlighted this in red. The important thing here is balance and avoid frequency stacking. Then we go to the groups, which is what we just created now, right? And we route all the tracks to the different groups. And what we are trying to do here is mix. Here we're gonna improve the sound, so mix. And here we're gonna set up the compressors. We're gonna, the black box. We're gonna do a little bit of maybe tube saturation, a few more things maybe within the strings. We'll see. We're gonna start adding plugins right now. And also, and more importantly, I would say, it's setting up the sense, right? We're going to, for this, we're gonna have to set up the effects groups with the reverbs like this. Here are the reverbs, short, mid, long reverb. And it is going to be set up this way. We're going to have the groups with sense. We're going to send to the effects group, short, mid, long, and from here it's going to go to master. But what happened if we want to export stems? If we want to export the stems, the reverb will not be printed in the stem. No problem, because with Cubase and with Logic you can do the same thing. You can set it up like this, master groups and sense, which is the CSPM. What this does is that Cubase is going to print all the reverbs in each one of the stems by doing a multi-export. Okay, so let's set up a little bit of a compression for percussion. Let's bring the reverbs all the way here. Convolution 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. And so here we got the groups. For percussion, I like to have this guy, one here and one here. And now we're gonna do 1, 2, 3. Great. Awesome. So this is gonna go all the way to 80, something like this. This is gonna go from 80 to the end of the MIDI area, kind of like 300 or something like this. This is gonna cover the mid-low, something like here, like 1K, something like this. And then this is gonna be till 10K, and then we're gonna have this guy. And we're gonna set up, can I select all of them? Yes. And the range is going to be -3, something like this. That's how much we want to compress. We can see like this, -3. Threshold, we'll set it up in a second. And the ratio is going to be 2 to 1 max. So very subtle. And what this will do is if we go here to, let's see, the high percussion here. Okay, let's set the threshold for all of them. There you go. And then the attack is going to be fast. And the release is going to be a little bit slow. All right, cool. Cool, awesome. We can duplicate this guy here for mid and percussion mid, percussion low. Now for mid, let's go to the tubular. So select all of them, and we're gonna bring the, okay, kind of thing. We'll have more instruments, so we should take into consideration that this is gonna sound louder at some point. And then finally, here for low. Okay, cool. So there you go. We've got a little bit of this guy here, and then we're gonna have, I know that we have to work on this later on, but I'm going to duplicate this guy all the way to the percussion here, percussion stem. So let's write some percussion. Cool. One. It's great. Done, done. Great. Boom. Quantize. Okay, what else? So we got this guy here. What else can we have? Timpani. Cool. Yeah, I think that's what else? I think we could have, I'm gonna duplicate this one, and we have percussion mid here. And this is, I'm doing this because the limitation of this library, and this is gonna go to percussion mid. So, because I think the toms are mid. Okay, cool. Dum dim dum dukadun dukadun dukadun. Okay. I don't like it. We did not work on the percussion tracks the other day. I'm going to real quick these guys here, so you can see a little bit better. Just gonna close them. I like to close percussion plus minus, 70 somethings, and we can close this one and copy, paste. Okay. The timpani, I like it a little bit more opened. We would have to do EQ and all that, but so we got this guy here. I think the snare could be considered mid. Let's consider it mid. So now we're gonna have some kind of like this can be mid as well. Cool. And then and then I think good enough. So this is what we've got here. So let's see how this is hitting the compressors. High. We have to bring this down just at that. Great, I think it's working. It's not compressing too much. Remember, this is it's compressing less than 3 dBs. So that's quite transparent. And we are doing this to control. And then we're gonna open this, which is the one in the group. Let's see how much it's compressing. Okay, so I'm maxed out, so good. I'm gonna bring it just, so minus 33. I'm gonna make it minus 32, 1 dB and a half less. Great, awesome. So, okay, so that's the first thing that we're going to do. We are working on this right now, on the mix, groups, compression, reverb sense, etc. We want to enhance, we want to make this sound a little bit better. So next thing that I'm going to do, and the fab filter, I guess, multi-band compressor, I could have done the same thing with Cubase, okay? I could have done the exact same thing with Cubase. In fact, I'm going to just for one of them. I would have to bring down the threshold. Let's see, when see that's we want this to go not lower than 3 dBs. So it went down minus 7 dBs. So we have to compensate 4 dBs. So minus 44 to minus 39, like something like this. Minus 4, minus 37, etc. Right? And we would adjust this way. So that's how we would do it with free plugin. We would adjust the ratio at 2 or less, the attack as fast as possible, and the release can be auto or it can be relatively slow, something like this. Okay, cool. I just did it with Fab Filter just because of speed and usability. I'm used to this one, okay? And I also like to control how much compression, the range, how much compression. I like that. And no matter what, it's never going to compress more than 3 dBs. For example, here when you select with the range, minus 3.23 dBs, never going to compress more than that. So that's that. We started with the compression. Let's work on the strings a little bit. So for the strings, I like this trick. I like to open the strings a little bit. So you don't have to do this, but S1, I like it. And I like to open the strings a little bit. So if we go to the strings here, I like to open them a little bit. No, here. There you go. The cat. See, that would be obviously too much. So I'm gonna open just a... Just a tad, see? 1.4, very subtle. So pay attention to the sides. Obviously with the speakers very hard, with headphones a little bit easier. But when it's yellow, it sounds a little bit more center. And if you pay attention to the sides, when I activate it, it kind of fills up the space on the sides a little bit more. So I'll start not active. Okay, especially in the high end is where you can hear it more open. So I like to do this with especially the highest strings. You can do this with the lowest strings, but generally I just do this with high strings. Second thing that I like doing is to add a little bit of brightness to the strings. So I'm gonna show you a trick that I love, which is this black box analog design, and I like this preset, which is the 18 mix bass 2, and then I like to bring down the air amount. It saturates a little bit the mid-high end, which adds a little bit of brightness and lifts the sound a little bit. I like to bring this down at like minus at 20%, something like this. And that's how I brighten the strings a little bit, in a very, very subtle way. If not, you can just EQ the strings a little bit. So I find that most of libraries, except for cine strings, most of libraries sound a little bit dull and dark and mellow for the strings. That's typical of string libraries as compared as a live orchestra. And this is very typical again when you set up mics farther away from the orchestra. The first frequencies that you're gonna lose are the high frequencies. So that's very typical that recorded samples sound a little bit darker, and that's why Dennis Sands compensated for this for the cine samples. So they sound like by placing those M50 vintage mics and by recording it in a very cinematic way, in my opinion. So, but when you compare, it feels like a little bit harsher. Anyway, this adds that tiny little bit of. But if you cannot do that, you can just if you don't have this plugin, then you can brighten them a little bit. Let's just bypass this plugin with something like with a little bit of EQ. Let's just record something here. Cool. Let's go. There you go, just like that for the strings. And we could duplicate this reverb, this EQ, copy, paste, paste, and paste, right? No, paste here, paste. So that's that, a little bit of lift for the strings, which I think it's necessary. Oh, by the way, this happens all the time. FabFilter adds, as you can see, 20 milliseconds of latency because we have active the look ahead. Yes, look ahead. There you go. Off, and boom, now it's gone to 0. So gonna go here, look ahead, off. So don't forget about this. Otherwise, you're gonna be like, we got so much latency in my system. Why? This off, and finally the one that we added here. It's adding 20 milliseconds. Back. Same thing. Look ahead, off. Awesome. We worked a little bit on the stems, on the groups, to improve the mix. We open the strings a little bit, we brighten them a little bit, we add a little bit of compression for percussion. There's not much that we need other than reverbs. Let's go to reverbs. So the reverbs are here. If you don't have any reverb, here's a suggestion. You can use a convolution reverb that's built in Cubase. Logic has a great convolution reverb as well. And then here's the kind of like algorithmic reverb. Okay, the convolution reverb is called this guy here, Reverence, and you can choose different IRs. And then here is this room works. This is kind of like the algorithmic reverb. Okay, I personally like, as I said, Seventh Heaven. I use it a lot, and then I use cinematic rooms. These are my reverbs. So you get so this stays in the video, and you can take a screen grab of this. Let's make this just a tad smaller. Let's put this in here. So this is my short gated reverb. This is my short gated reverb for top of the mix and high percussion. Valhalla Room is the big gate preset. This is the late and early settings. Then for this, I've got another short reverb, which is this one here. It's a Fab Filter Pro R. It's also a short, kind of like short reverb, 1.2 seconds. I like it for percussion. Generally, it's still a wide reverb, as you can see. Then I use Seventh Heaven for kind of like a mid type of reverb, and then I've got the Cinematic Room's main orchestral reverb, which is this one. So this is where my orchestra stem, not group, my orchestra stem hits this reverb, right? So so that's like a third reverb. We'll set this up in a second. Sometimes my main orchestral reverb is this one, sometimes this one. The Valhalla Rooms is a little bit brighter, and I really like this preset precast with a few modifications, but it's the Precasty Concert Hall. This is the late and this is the early. For the Cinematic Rooms is the Dark Cathedral preset with a few mods at 2.3 reverb length. Here's 2.6, and then for long high, kind of like long high strings, long things like this. I like this the kind of like the long algorithmic reverb is going to be Cinematic Rooms Legato Hall. And then for orchestral long low, so for cellos, things like these, double basses, I like the score stage because it's a little bit shorter, more controlled. So that's that. For brass, I like this AR1 from Waves, all good reverb. It's a Hall impulse response, nice even decay. 2.0 length. It's great. I like it for trumpets and horns specifically, but for brass in general. And then when I want like a super ultra mega long reverb, I like this one. Is this Low Attack Cathedral, which is 14 seconds reverb for when you want like a kind of like a never ending. If you break this up, it kind of like feels like a never ending reverb. All right, so these are my set of reverbs. I printed them here. I screen grabbed them here because I don't have my template open. I just wanted for you to be able to take a few screenshots and test this out. But for now, we're gonna set them up ourselves. Let's see. We kind of already did that. We've done the strings, right? We've done the violins. If we go here, so if we violin long. So violins one is hitting the strings high long, this guy here. And then we've got the convolution reverb, which is hitting this Seventh Heaven. And then we have the long reverb that's hitting this one. Okay. An alternative to this could be for a convolution reverb, we could have this one with these settings, and we could have for the algorithm reverb this one with these settings. Okay. Hall Los Angeles. This is the preset. Cool. You can copy this preset. Sounds very, very good. Now let's set up a reverb for percussion, because percussion generally doesn't need that much reverb, but the top of the mix percussion can benefit from what a gated reverb very, very much. So let's go with high. Okay, so this triangle, let's go with something a little bit dry. Yeah, so this tambourine goes from here to the to the percussion high stem, and then it goes to the percussion high group, and then it goes to the percussion stem. So here we want to add, we want this to go to, gonna create, let's go here, let's create a convolution reverb, short reverb. Let's create duplicate this, and let's create a gated reverb. Now let's go back here, let's go to the percussion high, go to tambourine, and this goes here, percussion high, we're gonna set up a send to the gated reverb, activate this. Now we don't have anything, now it goes here, sounds louder because it's a copy, but what we want is, no, here, gated reverb, what we want is, let's go with Valhalla, and we're gonna go with, let's see if I can find this preset. By the way, plate reverb, we'll set up a plate reverb for the mid percussion. We're looking for, how was it called? Big gate, I think it was. Gated. There you go, big gate. Makes sense. Okay, there you go. So instead of, and it's too much, but instead of, now we've got Too much. Bring this at -12. There you go. So without, with. So when this is grayed out, it's without, and with this color orange, it's with. So comparing. Maybe a little bit more. Great, that's what we need. Let's see the... There you go. What else can we try? What we want is a width but fast decay kind of thing, or short reverb with fast decay. That's it. Okay, cool. Let's set up a sort of like a mid reverb, mid plates reverb for metal percussion and things like this. That can work very well. And again, if you need more separation, I have my non-pitched metal percussion in a different stem, so you can do that as well. So where's the mid reverb? Mid reverb. We're gonna set up a plate reverb. So Valhalla here. Rooms, and I'm gonna go for like a plate type of thing, and it's going to be, let's see 2 seconds. Let's make it let's see the next 4 3 4 3. Let's go with a plate a little bit shorter. Let's see, so it's set up already here. Let's go with the percussion. No, let's you know what? See now, so high, and these are going to be, I'm going to duplicate this, and this is going to be metal percussion kind of thing. So the high pitch, so cymbals, etc. This kind of thing. Okay. So cymbals. Now we're gonna go back to here, and cymbal. Oh, I have to have another percussion here. Duplicate cymbals, etc. This guy here. So let's say that I've got this this one that is routed to the percussion, this one, cymbals, etc. Yeah, this one. It's hard, but if to hear, because the cymbal hit, or the piatti hit in this case, I think it is. The piatti hit has the tail, right? But if it was chopped, right, we could hear the reverb a little bit better. But let's go with what we've got. So this one goes here. We do not want this to go to the gated one. We're going to go to the kind of like mid reverb, and this one goes here, which is the Valhalla plate, right plate. There you go. Let's make it exaggerated. Instead of -10, it's gonna be 0. Okay. Without. With. Okay, so that's that. It adds a little bit of width. It's too much, obviously, so I'm gonna make it -10. Okay, cool. I think it can accept a little bit more. -8. Ah, cool, awesome. So reverbs setup. Obviously, I haven't finished the whole setup, but this is how you would do it. And now, next step is going to be ensuring that all the reverbs are set to the send or that go to the master. So let's see if that is true. And all these reverbs should go to master, stereo out. Fantastic, great. And let's continue. So we have all the groups with kind of like a compression for the percussion. We've opened the strings a little bit. We've brightened the strings a little bit. So a little bit of mixing. Then we added the sends. We just worked with the strings and a little bit of percussion. We set up the reverbs, and we have seen that generally we're gonna have first a convolution reverb and then an algorithmic reverb, and that's what we, by the way, this is all post fader. So that's that. and we would do this with the rest of the instruments. For percussion, sometimes we can do the same thing, add a little bit of convolution reverb first, just at that, and then the algorithmic reverb. We have seen that for high-pitched percussion or top of the mix percussion, the gated fast reverb works great. For metal percussion, something like a plate works, a short plate works great as well. So something between 1 to 2 seconds plate reverb. So we've seen some examples of that. We've seen some plugins under $100, free plugins or stock plugins that come with Cubase, and Logic has great ones as well. And then we've seen other more high-end, more expensive plugins that I use. Okay, I use all of them. So anyway, I like the musicality of cinematic rooms, for example, and it has such a immersive sound. That's the word I was looking for. All right, cool. Let's continue. Next, we're going to do the mastering, and we're done. So orchestra percussion, since we are talking now about the stems here, this is what is going to allow us to export for DAP. And so when we're done, it's like, okay, I'm gonna export the master and also the stems, so I can send this to DAP mix, and they can mix my music with the dialogue and sound effects. Cool. But we don't send 100 tracks. We send just 3, 4, 5, 6 groups or stems in this case. Okay, so let's go there. And what we want is that the sum of the stems to sound exactly the same as the master. So there could be a way around this, but generally what I do is I do the mastering in each one of the stems. And so for mastering, we are going to need number one, sometimes a little bit of EQ, like over, but we're not gonna go there. So a little bit of compression, and then a little bit of tape or some sort of a saturation. It helps, tape or tube saturation, and then some sort of exciter to brighten mix. Be careful here. There are other things, right? But that's pretty much it. So if you're gonna do this, a multiband compressor is what I would recommend. But that would be the basic. That's what you would do. So let's do this. I'm gonna show you. Generally, my mastering chain would look something like this. I would go with something like the Shadow Hills mastering compressor with this. What is that called? The mastering loud medium PGM preset. So I would go with this one. No tweaks on that one. I like the way it is. Then some sort of like 637 or like a Studer 800, something like this, with a little bit you can find a very subtle preset, something like this, and then just a little bit of fresh air, just that, something like this. It's just a little bit more than that. Generally here I go with this mix bus polish, I think it is, and then I bring it down to something like 2010 or something like this, 2010, something like this. And so if we play back the mix, this one here, for example. So without. See, so, and we can go one by one, but see, this opens the mix already a little bit. So, oh, by the way, I forgot. So this can be like something like S1 from Waves or something like this. You can do all this with Isotope, Ozone, but I'm using different plugins and some free plugins, etc. But let's go to the staccatos, and so you can see the difference when I add this guy. If it's just one long note, for example. This is one of the most amazing plugins I've ever used. It's beautiful, amazing what it does, in my opinion. Such a subtle but meaningful way. Then this guy. Right, and then finally, obviously, this is the most drastic and the most obvious one. So now this, careful with this, because it's usually it's pleasant to always do too much of this, but it depends on, this is necessary for cinematic music. We use this, we need to have this, because it just adds, and I'm using this one as a free one. It sounds pretty decent. You can do this with EQ, you can do this with a brightener, you can do this with an exciter or something like this, right? Isotopes exciter works great. And there are different flavors. You've got tubes, and you've got the different types of tubes, and you've got tape saturation of that. So there's a black box as well. It's just adding some sort of brightness and excitement, and a little bit more of top end to the mix. I like this one. Easy to use. It's free, but it's important. See, I'm gonna deactivate halfway of the first ostinato. See that it kind of loses? Now I'm gonna do it the other way around. More exaggerated, way too much, but here we go. Right? So you see how when you add it, it's not that big of a deal, but when you remove it, it's like, oh man, that was so dull. Right? So generally I keep it at, under 20, max 25, 28. It's my max depending on where I want to take this. But this is important because, especially when you are doing stuff for Netflix or TV or things like this, because generally the music is very important for the emotional component of it, right? It's sometimes it's 50% of the story. So that being said, then they mix your music in in a dub stage with big speakers, kind of like cinematic mix, or you're listening to your music with these speakers, or you with headphones, or with an earfields, and everything sounds so perfect, so close, and with so much definition. When someone is watching the movie, your music is mixed under dialogue and sound effects. The speakers are crappy speakers pointing backwards, right? So you're gonna lose so much, and so that top end, that definition is gonna help, and most importantly, you're gonna lower the volume, right? And they're gonna be listening to the movie, from like 9 feet away or 3 meters away, something like this, right? In the couch, or 5 meters away, 15 feet away. So the dialogue being the most important element, it's going to always sound loud, but your music, which is the secondary, the dialogue in a movie is like the melody or the voice in a song. And so it's the most important element. It's the one that's going to always predominate. It's the one that always going to be present. And so your music is always going to be secondary, playing behind dialogue. On top of that, if you're watching the movie with a low volume, far away from TV, crappy speak, you're gonna lose so much of your music. And the first thing that you're gonna lose is the definition. Is the high frequencies again are the first that with it's the frequencies with less energy that got lost first. So with classical music, you generally don't need that much. With cinematic music, it tends to sound a little bit brighter. Okay, so that's that. Let's continue. I'm gonna move this down here, and I'm going to do the percussion stem, so you see here. So it would be the same thing, but now we have this one, right? So let's take a listen to the percussion bit here. With these guys actually. Again. Alright. So there you go. That's it. This template is finished. It's not finished, but because I have, there are certain things we have to duplicate. This here, etc. Right? You know what I'm doing. We did not finish last week doing all the cues for all the instruments. We've set up the reverbs and the sends, but just for the strings high long, that we haven't set it up for the rest of the instruments. We haven't done it for the woods. We have not done percussion mid, percussion low, pianos, keys, etc. We have not. So there are certain things that we still haven't done, but we've done the entire process, just not in every track. We have set up all the tracks that we did that last week. Then we've set up all the groups. We did that last week. We've added all the mixing plugins, compression for percussion. We've opened the the strings just a tad, especially the higher strings with S1 from Waves. We set up all the reverb sends. We set up all the effects groups with all the reverbs. We have a convolution reverb and the algorithmic reverb. And then we also set up like a gated reverb for percussion, a mid reverb for mid percussion. And we showed options for like the long reverb or the long convolution reverb. We've seen Cinematic Rooms, we've seen Valhalla as well. And we've seen some of the free ones from Cubase, but the Logic has as well. And then we set up the stems, the goal here. So the goal in the group is mix, the goal in the stems is mastering. So we set up all the mastering plugins chain. We talked about, you know, what is needed here, width, EQ, or EQ, and then width, then compression, multiband if possible, a little bit of tape or chips saturation, and then exciter. And that's what we did with these plugins here. So a little bit of compression for percussion, then the extra compression here, which I do for everyone, but it's a very subtle compression, then tape saturation, and then a little bit of brightness. And we've seen the difference. Before and after. And all this gets routed to the master. Let's just move it here, the stereo, boom, here, so we can see it. And if we wanted to export this, let's record a melody line over here real quick. Let's do strings. Dun, 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 dun. Percussion is super loud. We're gonna go here, 5. This is part of balancing. We're gonna command shift, and we're gonna bring down this minus 6 dBs. Let's see. Let's see if I can compete. I think so. It's still a little bit too loud. Minus 9. Let's see. I think it was good. Let's bring it back to minus 6 is good. And now, yeah, no, in fact, maybe minus 4. Let's go just to the most stupid piece of music that I've ever written. It's bad. It is bad, but it works. Maybe let's see how low the horns go. Yeah. Trombones, short bones. It's not perfectly. Great. So now the reason why I've done this. The reason why I've done this so we can export. If we go here, what do we have in keys? We said that the celesta would go to keys. Celesta. What's going on? Celesta and ARP, we said that they were going to keys, and keys is going here, and keys and others should go to not percussion but keys. There you go, keys. That's why we now we got these 3 stems. Okay, cool. So now if we hit A, let's see how this will work. So this is going to be, let's take this to the right place. Yes, yes, multiple instances. No, from beginner to pro. Exports, there you go. Test, export. Okay, cool. This is the name, save. We're gonna make sure that effects is included, so CSPM. And we're gonna export the stereo and the orchestra, percussion, synths, and keys. There's nothing in synths, but we'll export it anyway. Well, no, it's just not exported for speed. So export audio, and here's what's gonna happen. Boom. Export number 1, there you go. So the full master, there's the stereo out. Export number 2, here we go. Coming up. Boom, orchestra. There you go. Orchestra. Second, percussion. And finally, the keys. And now if we go here, and we go to composing, projects, template training, from beginner to pro, export, there you go. We've got the stereo out. Not bad for a free template. The orchestra with reverbs, with the reverbs, percussion, and keys. The ARP and celesta.